Welcome to the All Things Nintendo podcast. I'm Brian Shea from Game Informer, and this is a weekly podcast to discuss all the biggest news and games from the world of Nintendo. I mentioned having a lot of stuff to get to last week because of Summer Game Fest, but this week is the kind of week for which this podcast exists. In case you haven't been online all week, we got the long-awaited first real Nintendo Direct of 2024. So you know we're going to take this entire episode talking about the news that came out of it. Joining me for this episode is host and producer extraordinaire Camille Salazar Hadaway. Camille, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really good. And I just have to say, your intro was really great. Like just how you kind of went through all of everything that's going to be covered was pretty well done, especially because I would have been like, oh, I was going to cover a lot of things. But then Nintendo just threw like a whole bunch of stuff that we also got to pile in here. All that's great and we'll get to. But yeah, I'm doing great. I'm fitted in my, Link Between Worlds t-shirt that I'm loving. So it's a good time. And we get to see each other again.
Yes. So we met at Summer Game Fest, and we've also, in the time since, have been like, we were also at all these other events. We just didn't run into each other. You had hosted Nintendo Live.
Yeah,
I was at Nintendo Live. We could have been hanging this whole time.
We could have been friends since then.
I know, but it's funny. The way that we met was at the infamous JW Marriott Hotel bar.
Yeah,
and walking around seeing who's there, because that's kind of the great meeting point of everybody at the Game Awards and then Summer Game Fest. And I saw my pal Steve Saylor. And I walk over, just a gem of a human being, and I say, hey, what's up? And then you're sitting there at the table, and I introduce myself, and we just go off on like probably a 45-minute to an hour-long tangent about what we think is what the future holds for the Legend of Zelda franchise.
Yeah, exactly. We had all these theories, we were just going in deep. I think we might have cleared that table. I think other people were like, oh, this is getting like a little intense. Let's just keep moving. Let's just keep moving. And then we were there geeking out.
I think we got a little too nerdy for everybody else at Summer Game Fest, which is saying a lot.
But you know what? It was worth it because then we both realized, obviously, that we're really, like a lot of people, true Zelda fans. And I mean, this week for us, it just makes sense that we came together for this episode this week.
Given our conversation and given the news that we're going to get to a little bit later, few people would be a better fit for this episode than you. So I really appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy schedule to appear on this episode of All Things Nintendo.
I'm excited to be here. And now I'm starting to think, wait, when we come together and start thinking about things, are we fortune tellers? Did we somehow did we talk it into existence?
Did we touch on because I think at one point I did float that it would be a 2D Zelda game.
Yes you did, but we never touched on, there were rumors that Zelda would be playable. We didn't really dive too deep into that.
We didn't, but we're going to get to that in a bit. But we have to start things off this way. Every time somebody makes their first appearance on All Things Nintendo, I ask them two questions that allows the audience to kind of get to know them through the lens of their history with Nintendo. So the very first part of that is, what was your first Nintendo game? It could be the first game you owned, the first game you played, your first Nintendo memory, the thing that made you kind of be like, oh, I really like the stuff that Nintendo puts out.
Yeah. I think it was actually the game that made me say, oh, I really like video games, because it was the first video game that I could remember playing, and that would be Super Mario World.
Yes.
It came out around the holidays. My dad got my sister and I a Super Nintendo Entertainment System and then hogged it for 48 hours. And I watched him beat with all the special levels, Super Mario World, and then attempted it myself. Of course, that was the gift he meant to give me and my sister. But obviously, like any other human being that would get their hand on an SNES, wanted to play it himself. But honestly, I just remember just so many iconic things about that game. Like getting the feather and trying to figure out how to fly as Mario. Yeah. There was so much excitement, and it felt like every level and every world really in that game, there was like a new thing you had to master. right? So for me, like, it was just that was the experience where I was like, wow, video games is video games is pretty cool. Like, this is insane. And then obviously, like, that was my introduction to the world of Nintendo, to Mario, and I haven't looked back since.
Mm. And you have the same first Nintendo game in terms of ownership that I have, which was Super Mario World. I got it for Christmas one
Nice.
year, and I played it with my dad as well. So it was it's a good two-player game. We went through and also 100% of that game together. But I love the gift that is for somebody else, but it's actually for you, which
Yeah.
seems like that's what that was.
It was definitely that. I have to ask you though, because I may or may not judge you. Were you always Mario or Luigi?
I, I'm pretty sure I was Mario. I'm pretty sure my dad let me be player one.
Oh, that was very nice of your dad. I have a sister, so once my dad finished playing, my sister and I would play. She's older than me, so I defaulted to Luigi. And because of that, I have like this affinity to anything Luigi because I'm like, you know
Oh.
what? I understand what it means to be the younger sibling or that other sibling that may not be the first to come to mind when your cousins are thinking of. I was like the underdog, like Luigi. So I would always just be like, anyone who reps Luigi, automatically a check mark in my book.
Hey, so were you all about the year of Luigi when that happened?
Oh yeah, definitely. It was so good. And also like I just love how the evolution of Luigi, like really becoming his own character that has this other fandom because of his cowardness, but like it's also like how anyone else would react if they were, going into a haunted mansion for the first time by themselves. It's like, yeah, we'd be a little bit cowardly and we're going to own that.
Which, by the way, that's going to be the topic, I believe, next week. That's when Luigi's Mansion 2 HD comes out. So stay tuned next week for our review of that. But I'm actually kind of disappointed in you, Camille, because
What?
it looks like you have a nice TV in your background right now.
Yes.
You should have the Luigi death stare, like 3-second loop, just
I
playing on
should.
repeat the entire time.
I should. I definitely need to have like some Luigi stuff. I do actually have a Luigi statue
I
like
see it
right up
kind of.
here. Yeah, you can see his legs. So he's still in the background and I'm still repping him. I do also have like these little like the Tanuki Mario as
Oh,
well. So
nice.
I'm repping both brothers.
All right. Well, yeah, there you go. It's all about balance.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, that takes us to the second part of this question. What is your favorite Nintendo game of all time?
I mean, I said I'm wearing my Link Between Worlds shirt. That is my love and affinity for Zelda. I love The Legend of Zelda. I love Link. And the first game that introduced me to that is The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, which is by far my favorite game. Like I said, how, Super Mario World introduced me to the world of video games. I would say The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time introduced me to the ability of storytelling within games and real like character development and like just really smart writing in games,
Hmm.
in the dialogue with like the quirky characters throughout the world of Hyrule, and also terrified me at the same time. As a kid, I just remember, and I think I told you this, I just remember as Kid Link, going to the graveyard, um, and like just hearing the lightning, and you have to move these tombstones, and being absolutely terrified to play, especially at nighttime. And that was probably the first game that I was allowed to stay up late to play,
Oh,
and
wow.
like kind of like binge play that game. So I just remember like getting to that part and it was like later in the night and being absolutely terrified, and having like my mom sit in the room with me while I played that part.
Was she like, I should have never gotten you this Nintendo 64?
Well, luckily it was a Majora's Mask, so she didn't realize how creepy it could actually get. Because I'm pretty sure if she saw the moon staring down at me, she probably would have been like, maybe this isn't age appropriate.
And also, the entire game is just framed around the concept of death and grieving.
Exactly. Exactly. Of course, as a kid playing that, that went over my head. But I'm like, even everything with Epona, and like, I just remember like as an adult Link and having to, get the frog, like you're getting the ingredients for the potion, for the Switch to make this potion. And you have to like go on Epona and you get this frog, essentially, from Zora's Dominion, and you have to like just bank it all the way to Lake Hylia in order to like give the Switch that ingredient. And I just remember like, oh no, like the anxiety, like that's like, and that was the beauty of it. Like I was able to experience all these different types of emotions. And although Super Mario World really had me excited about video games and it was just like happy and fun all the time, it was just like I felt sad. I felt like sad for Saria and Link and their like it was just a roller coaster of emotions that I will never forget. And I love playing it. And I really cannot wait, Nintendo, if you're listening, just to remaster it. I want to play it again. I want to play it
Yeah.
again on a newer console.
It's
Please.
it's nice to have it on Switch Online, and like you have to. I mean, I've told the people on this show so many times, if you're going to play the N64 games on Switch Online, you've got to buy that
Yeah.
Nintendo 64 controller for Switch that they sell on the Nintendo store, because most of the Nintendo controllers translate just fine to like the modern face button layout and like the Pro controller, or the Pro controller, that's what it's
Yeah,
called.
the Pro controller, yeah.
Not the Nintendo 64. That, I don't know
No.
what they were thinking when they designed that. I mean, they designed the entire controller around one game, and that was Super Mario 64. And then like,
Yeah.
oh, what other things can we do with this controller? And it worked out really well in the moment, but at the same time, if when they try to port these games over to newer consoles, and obviously they abandoned that form factor of controllers a long time ago, doesn't work so well. So yeah, I actually, that's how I experienced Majora's Mask for the first time, was playing on the Nintendo Switch Online with the Nintendo 64 wireless controller.
Oh, wow. That was your first playthrough of Majora's Mask?
Yeah, so I never had the expansion pack when I was a kid,
Ah,
and then
okay.
I bounced off the 3DS version because I'm just not like much of a handheld gamer. Like it
Okay.
has to be like a game I'm like obsessed with. I also don't think that Majora's Mask is the best pick for like a
No,
handheld console.
not at all. And
Um,
and I think that was kind of like my hurdle for the remastered on the 3DS for Ocarina of Time as well. Like I really am a handheld gamer. Like I loved
okay.
playing on my 3DS, my Nintendo DS, like and the Switch I do play in handheld mode quite often. But it was just like those games, because I think they're so driven in story, I really do want to experience it like on a bigger screen. Like while this game is docked if it were to come up on the Switch. But it was just like really, really weird too with the controls. Like I don't think they mastered it quite yet, especially in that 3DS version, and same with Majora's Mask. But I do like going back to playing like Ocarina of Time. You play that on the N64, right? I'm
Yes.
guessing. When you have the inventory, right? And you have, and it was just so easy, the C directionals, in order to like just bank them there. Like, I don't even know how you would map that on the Switch controller as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be an easy way. I mean, the right stick is the obvious answer for anything that was on the C buttons, because that kind of
Yeah.
replaced those C buttons.
Yeah.
So if you think about like all the games, like especially Mario 64, that was the camera controls. And what is the traditional camera control now? It's the right stick.
Yeah. That's
Uh,
true. Yeah.
It's kind of where you'd have to default, but like that's the one thing I do love about like the Wii U and 3DS Zelda games, is having that inventory right on like the second screen.
Yes.
That,
Yeah.
or like any kind of thing that has like a map on the second screen. That was the only reason that I liked second screen Nintendo era.
So did you play, because you said you weren't too handheld, did you play A Link Between Worlds?
I 100%ed it. Like I
Yeah.
said, it has to be like a game that I am super excited for, or like all about. I did every single thing you could do in A Link Between Worlds. And when the trailer started, that we're going to talk about in the main segment, I was like, oh my God, they're remaking A Link Between Worlds, but with the Link's Awakening art style. It turns out they were not.
No, they were
I
not.
was so excited.
But A Link Between Worlds as well, like that was a game like undeniably built for the DS. Like, that was built for handheld, using the secondary screen to like drop down to that different world as well, right? So it's
Hmm.
like I do like, and again, love for Zelda, like even Phantom Hourglass, like how they utilize that game to highlight the ability of the handheld at that whatever generation you're playing that on, right? So with Phantom Hourglass, and how you have to, or sorry, Spirit Tracks, how you have to like blow in, which was a
Yeah.
weird era. handheld, but like blow in. It is just really cool things. I know sometimes people like to give Nintendo flack for, but it is innovative. And you look back to even the Wii U, and you could dispute the success there and whether you love it or not, but what you have to obviously recognize is how that was the baseline for the Switch, and without the Wii U we wouldn't have had the Switch, right?
Oh,
So
absolutely. It was a half step towards the ultimate destination.
yeah, exactly. Or like the Wii, right? And you have the sound, like something as basic as the sound coming out of the controller. Now that is integrated in pretty much every console that we have. That
Hmm.
sound, you think of the PlayStation 5, it's like the Wii was the first one to do that, right? And like
Yeah.
people thought that was weird, but see how long that lasted with us, right? So
Hmm.
don't hate on the gimmicks, if you want to call it that. They have a purpose. They have a purpose.
I mean, I wish that the Wii U was a little bit more thought out. I mean, it
Yeah.
was kind of like always, it was always the thing of like, all right, this is cool, I guess, that I can like, if like, somebody is in the room and they want to watch TV, they can do it. And then I can keep playing like whatever game I'm playing on this screen, but I can't like take it on a plane, or I can't like
Yeah.
go up 2 floors and keep playing it in my bed. Like, I mean, that's what the Switch ultimately delivered. And I think that's why it's so successful.
Exactly. It was like, I think what maybe they wanted the Wii U to be, but just limited with technology at that time or how much they could
Hmm.
integrate in a console. So I also like kind of nerding out about that and like having conversations of like the evolution of Nintendo, because it really, you're seeing one thing lead to the next. Like I've been rewatching this is gonna sound weird. Super Mario Super Show.
Oh, nice. Is that on
I
Netflix still, or is that elsewhere?
This is on Amazon
Oh, that's
Prime.
right. Yeah, I did see that.
Yeah, and it's because honestly, I didn't remember it. Like, I know, like, as I got older, I was like, "Oh, yeah, this show that was, like, weird," right? But I didn't really remember it, and what I'm enjoying about going back and watching, because they had, those episodes where Link, they would tease, like, The Legend of Zelda, and then you would see, like, those shows. So on Prime, they also have those episodes as well. Not an ad. But what I realized, even with how they design Princess Zelda in those shows, is very similar to how she appears in Breath of the Wild. Like she
Mm,
has like a pouch, which now became her Sheikah slate.
yeah,
She
let's
has more of
see.
an adventurer model when she's not in the gown, when she's actually out and about with Link. So it's like I don't know if that's inspiration, probably not, but it's pretty cool to see how these elements of these things, these assets, or like these shows that we just thought like Nintendo kind of threw away, kind of come back in like hidden moments throughout their new iterations as well.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I am looking at like Zelda's outfit
Yeah.
in that cartoon, and you can definitely see like, all right, yeah, that pouch was absolutely replaced by the Sheikah slate.
Yeah.
I never would have noticed that. So, astute observation on your part. But Camille, we have a lot to get to. So,
We
we're
do.
going to get to the news segment. But before that, a reminder that you can join the free All Things Nintendo Patreon page, which gives you the easiest access to all things Nintendo. I just ran a poll over there asking people what they would like to get out of paid tiers on the Patreon page if I were to do that. So, you even get a say in the future of the content that I bring you. Later on in the show, we'll also be going to some community reactions to the Nintendo Direct. So you can submit questions and topic suggestions there, or you can just email me directly at brian@allthingsnintendo.com. So, Camille, you've actually done work with Nintendo. You hosted the Nintendo Treehouse Live celebrating the launch of Tears of the Kingdom, which how much of a dream was that?
I was like, I've been hosting and gaming and esports for some time now, but that was definitely an opportunity that I was crying up to the moment of like going live, because it was just such a real, like, surreal moment. I was lucky enough where the Treehouse team reached out and they were kind of like, "Hey, we've been watching you for like 5 years, and we know you
Wow.
love The Legend of Zelda. We would really like you to be a part of this." And I was like, okay. And then the opportunity to interview Ainuma-san, which was like just mind blowing. The little kid in me was definitely screaming. And it's like also just to be around other Legend of Zelda fans,
Mhm.
like seeing how passionate the community is, like it's just I can't I'm gonna start crying. I'm gonna
Well,
start crying, Brian. I'm gonna start crying.
I do the same thing. Like, I get like these swells of emotion every single time I go to these events. Like Trish Hirschberger, I don't know if you know her.
Yeah.
She was on the show, and we were actually at Nintendo Live. Like I met her, or I saw her there, and her family was there, and we all saw the Legend of Zelda orchestra, and we were all just bawling, like in
Yeah.
like the the same row as we are like watching these. And yeah, like I get that same way. Like when I saw Assassin's Creed Shadows demo, like people were like freaking out, and it like got me like so hyped. I was like getting a little emotional. So like I get that 100%. Now, was this Treehouse Live? Was this at the Nintendo store in
New
New
York?
York?
Yeah, it
I
was
was
in New
supposed to be
York.
there too.
Are you
Yeah,
serious?
but I caught COVID 2 days before it.
Oh, well, you know what? Although I would have loved to meet you back then, maybe it's for the better that you weren't there. But I mean, we were destined, I guess, to meet eventually. But yeah, that was actually like where I met so many people because I'm from Toronto. I don't really get an opportunity. A lot of my hosting jobs, I'm usually alone,
Mm.
so I don't get an opportunity to really see my U.S. counterparts in the space. So it was nice actually being in the New York store. Yes, because I'm a huge Zelda fan and the opportunity was wild, but also seeing everyone else from the media side of things in the industry was really nice as well. Oh my gosh. And the bus that they had lit up with,
Oh.
yeah, Tears of the Kingdom. They had like a Link bus. Have you seen this bus?
No, I haven't seen the bus.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
gonna bring it up.
Yeah, you gotta bring it up. They had this Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom bus, and it was parked outside, and that's kind of where all the fans were lining up. So on one side of the bus, it has that
Whoa.
marketing, and it glows at the bottom. But I didn't know until after the event, and I went back to my hotel that the other side actually has Link with his whole lit up arm and everything like that. It was wild.
I'm looking at the arm right now. It is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it open to full screen, but Instagram is a nightmare on
Yeah,
desktop.
Instagram's a nightmare, but yeah, no, it's crazy, and I'm just so happy that I was able to be a part of it. I will never forget that, and because of that, so then when I was at Nintendo Live, hearing the orchestra,
Mm.
and when it kicks to Tears of the Kingdom, now whenever like Breath of the Wild is anything Zelda, like I usually do, my eyes water, but now anything that I hear that's from that Tears of the Kingdom soundtrack, automatically I will start like just crying because now that's just a special place in my heart that I can't believe that I was able to play such a small part with that release. But yeah, I'm gonna stop because I'm starting to tear up again.
No, so that trip I was also supposed to interview Eiji Aonuma and Hidemaru Fujibayashi. So because I, got COVID, I was no longer able to go to that. However, they did set up a Zoom call, but I was still like, oh, it would have been great to like see them in person. Like I'd met Eiji Aonuma once before. I'd interviewed him at E3 2019, and that was when I've famously planted the seeds for Skyward Sword HD, and he told me it was probably close to impossible. And then 2 years
And then
later, we
it
got
came
the
out.
announcement of it. And I actually asked him about that, and he was like, "Yeah, when you asked me that, I said like I probably thought it was impossible, but then like I started thinking about it more, and I'm like, maybe we could do it." So I take at least half credit for the existence of that game.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for your
And
contribution.
to be fair, when I did finally get to interview them in person at the Game Awards last year, I asked them about an Ocarina of Time remake, and I got a no comment from Eiji Aonuma.
He knows you're on to him. He
He
knows you're on
does.
to him.
So how did you even get involved with hosting in the first place?
Honestly, it started off with covering for a enthusiast like gaming blog. I was just writing reviews and news updates, and then from there, of course, you get to go to a lot of press events. So I was invited to a lot of press events in Toronto, where I'm from, and I was just like, you know what, I don't know how to shoot a video, but I'm gonna bring a camera that I own, that my parents got me for another Christmas gift. And I just lugged that around. And I think because I was probably just this girl with this tripod and a dream, lugging this thing around, I was like interviewing everyone, and I would go to events, interview everyone. From there, I started to, I think like, the studios saw me and what I was doing and saw some of that content and how I really do try to make a connection, even if it's a brand new game, like make a connection with the community and the content, as well as like just have lots of fun, like working in games is like the funnest thing I think anyone could do. Yes, there's stressful moments, obviously, but like living out a part of your dream every day is like really cool. So I try to have lots of fun, and I think they appreciated that. So I was starting to get hired for their marketing campaigns for digital, and then from there it kind of went to working on a daily esports and gaming show for 4 years, and then hosting like a bunch of different things.
Yeah, you've done Rainbow Six, you've done racing esports like with
Yeah,
NASCAR.
NASCAR. Yeah, yeah. Call of Duty, a lot of things. Like I did a Crash. It was Crash, like a Bandicoot promotional with PlayStation. Like there's so many things
Wow.
that I even forget that I've done, and really, truly, I never thought. Just being a fan of a video game and like video games in general could have led me on this path. But I'm so grateful it did because I get to meet really cool people like you too.
Oh, well, thank you. But congratulations on, kind of getting through that tough part of, kind of doing it on your own until you're relevant, right? Like that was the exact route that I took for getting into games media was I just, I started a website I started writing for a small website. Then I started a website, like co-founding it with a friend, and then just started basically going to events like on
Yeah.
my own. And like I always like talked about, because I had a day job, and I would go to my day job and then I would take all of my PTO and all of my like disposable income to go to like PAX East and all the different conventions and everything all around. And I would always like take like a long weekend to go out there, and I would have the time of my life. And then I would come back and I'd be like, oh man, I was just like kind of cosplaying as games media. And then now it's like back to the real world of like, oh man, I'm a computer consultant. And
Yeah.
it is such a great feeling when you do finally get over that plateau,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, a lot of, well, there's a lot of different paths in gaming, especially nowadays. But I think for quite a few people, especially in games media, like that's how it started off. It's like, it's this hobby that you have, and then you go back to your 9 to 5 and you're like, oh, well, this is sucking my soul dry.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that's what I kind of felt. I was probably the youngest bank manager at the time. And I would go back to work and I would just be like, oh my God, I feel like I am just lost here. Like I knew this was not what I wanted to do, but hey, it paid the bills. And it
Mm-hmm.
also gave me a lot of skills and professionalism and understanding like how to handle my money, which is very important, especially if like you're hosting or doing anything freelance, like you kind of get that understanding of how to run your own business as well. So I do appreciate working my 9 to 5 for that. But it is something I think, what I like to tell anyone that wants to get into this industry, I always say, like, if you really want to work in this industry, you're going to understand how to make it work while paying the bills and working another job. Like if you're truly passionate, and it will be stressful, but it's like, never put all of your eggs in one basket.
Mm-hmm.
It's always, you have to understand, like, you do have to pay bills, you do have to live, you have to eat, and when you first get into this industry, that may not happen right away. So managing how to get that done while also pursuing this career and dream, although it's tough, like it's worth the growing pain if you're very serious about it.
Yeah, if you stick with it, and again, it's just doing it until you're relevant, and then once people know your name, know your face, know your work, eventually opportunities will start coming your
Yeah.
way as long as you stick with it. That's the hardest thing though, is like there were so many times on the come up that I was like, man, I'm done with this. Like I'm tired of
Yeah.
like going to work from like 8 until 6, coming home, eating a quick dinner, and then like doing work on my hobby
Yeah.
and turning my hobby into basically a second job that I'm not even paid for
Yeah.
until I started doing freelance.
Well, exactly. That's what it is. And I don't know about you, but for me, like I got out, like it was very hard for me to get out of that mentality. Even when I had like my hosting career or started my hosting career, to get into the mentality of like, hey, actually, I'm working like pretty much full-time hours, and what I'm making is like sustainable within gaming. Why am I still working my 9 to 5 job? Like I was doing a crazy amount of work between the two. Like I think I was doing something around like 70 hours a week. Like
Jeez.
I don't even think that's possible, but I was like really like even while I was working at the bank, which maybe I shouldn't say this, I was doing like I was writing.
Oh no, I did that too.
Yeah, right? So it's like it was just like insane. And I think I was working on this esports and gaming show full time. And I was about 2 years into that, and I'm like, why am I still working at the bank? Like someone asked me, like, why are you working at the bank? I'm like, huh. I didn't really think about that, because you're just like always on the go, that drive to make a career out of this hobby and like this passion that you have, that it's like you sometimes forget to check in on yourself. So like
Hmm.
that's the other thing. Check in on yourself for your own mental health and like what you think is sustainable, and reassess like your position in the industry, and in your 9 to 5 space as well, and see where you can make adjustments. That was one thing where I was like, why didn't I quit my bank job like 2 years ago? Like that was dumb. But hey, we all learn, some slower than others.
See, for me, I had to quit my job when I quote unquote made it, was because I got a full-time job with Game Informer and I had to
Yeah,
relocate from Austin all the way up to Minnesota. So yeah,
you have
that
to
was
move.
kind
Yeah.
of a requirement for me to quit my other full-time job in order to do it. But I was doing freelance for 2 years prior to
Mhm.
joining Game Informer. So like you can find old articles of mine on IGN and Kotaku and all those good places. But Game Informer's been my home for over 9.5 years now.
That's crazy. That
Yeah,
is
it's been
crazy.
great. It really has been.
Congrats to you, because
Thank you.
I think anyone that has a career like approaching 10 years in the industry, that's like that's a legacy right there in this industry. That's a legacy.
And it was wild because when I started, I had about 6 years of writing about games under my belt. And I joined, and it was like, because this was like my first full-time job, I joined as an entry-level person, even though I
Yeah.
had all that time under my belt. But it's like games media is so competitive, especially like with how few positions there are now,
Yeah.
that like even though like entry level means like you have like several years of experience.
I feel like that's across the board with like a lot of jobs nowadays, but it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, you have to, there could be no ego like in this industry. Like you just have to take the work that, you want to do at whatever level, because I always see it as experience. Like even if it's entry level or a new community that I may be hosting for that I'm not quite familiar with, but willing to put in the time to learn, like it still brings experience, because every type of work, like if you weren't at Game Performer and somewhere else as well, like it's a different environment, so you have to learn things differently or do things differently. So it's like, take in all the experience. If you're just starting out, don't, there's no egos in this space. Like just take everything and soak it in like a sponge.
Oh, well, there's a lot of egos in this space, but try not to be one of them, I guess, is the lesson there.
Lesson of the day.
Yes, but
Don't have an ego.
we're doing what we did at Summer Game Fest, which is we're just talking off the cuff here, but we actually have some topics to cover
Oh yeah,
on this
that.
podcast. We could talk for another 3 hours, and I'm sure people would listen to it because we would just get into all the nerdy corners of Mario and Zelda and all the other Nintendo properties. But we have some non-Nintendo Direct news to get to, so we're going to jump into that. First up, we already knew that they were remaking Lollipop Chainsaw, and now we know when we can play it. So Lollipop Chainsaw came out in 2012 on PS3 and Xbox 360, was directed by Suda51 and developed by Grasshopper Manufacture, his studio. And it was written by James Gunn. A lot of people forget this. So now of Guardians of the
What?
Galaxy and DC Universe, he's the CEO of the DCU that is about to kick off, I think, next year with the Superman movie. He's the writer and director of that as well. The writer and director of the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. Yeah, he was the writer of Lollipop Chainsaw.
I did not realize that.
Yeah.
Also 2012 just seems like yesterday. That is crazy. It's been that long already.
That was the first time I met Suda51, was PAX East 2012, and it was an after party for The Witcher 2 Enhanced Edition, I think it was, that was
Okay.
coming to Xbox 360. And I got like the PR got me like a VIP thing. So this was like my first, like it was my second or third convention I ever went to. And PR was like, hey, we can like get you into like the VIP section of this party. And I was like, what? Like that's incredible. And like, you know, it was the first time I met Felicia Day, second time I met Felicia Day. And then
Oh,
like,
nice.
Suda51 was just hanging out and I got to meet him. And that was just a really cool experience. And it was like The Witcher 2, which, this predates when The Witcher like 3 like really set the world on fire with its amazing game and storytelling and everything. Like, so The Witcher was like a series people knew, but it wasn't the series that it is now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was like a really cool event. I don't know if James Gunn was there. I wish I could have met him though. I'm sure he was at that thing, like doing interviews and everything, because that was Lollipop Chainsaw was what they were promoting. And I did go on a cruise, and Sean Gunn, his brother, who's also in the Guardians of the Galaxy, he's in all of James Gunn's movies, or a lot of them. He was there, and I ran into him a few times, because it was like one of those like Comic-Con cruises.
Okay,
I don't think it was
good.
like official Comic-Con, but like it was like a comic book convention cruise, and they had people from Guardians of the Galaxy, Stranger Things, and The Walking Dead.
Okay.
They had like different actors from those, and
On a boat. Yeah.
all on a boat. Frank Miller was on the boat. He got on, did his little panel, and could not have gotten off that boat fast enough.
How did they just taxi him off? Like on a
I'm pretty sure like they had like a day where like they were at sea, and he like just like he did his thing, signed the autographs that people paid to do, took the pictures, probably retreated to his room, and then like got off first thing the next morning when we were at port. But it was just such a weird hodgepodge. It was like you'd be walking around and be like, oh, there's like two of the kids from Stranger Things, and this was like Stranger Things season 1, so like they were still
so
like
it was like
actual kids.
Yeah, and it was like it was blowing up, like it was actually like hitting
they probably signed on like before that was like an enormous hit, and they're like, all right, well, we have these obligations.
And it's like, we got to do it. But so have you played Lollipop Chainsaw? Like, were you a fan of that?
I wasn't.
Same here.
I was exposed to it outside of that PAX East where I got to see it and all that stuff. I was exposed to it through a former partner who was really into it, and I would watch some of the times that she would play it. And it always seemed very strange, but also like that's the trademark of Suda51. Like he just brings like kind of like that punk rock mentality, but also like he brings the weird vibes with all of the games he directs, and James Gunn will not hesitate to lean into it. So like, the premise is it's this high school cheerleader named Juliet. And she's out, I think she goes and like meets her boyfriend out in front of the school, and a zombie outbreak occurs, and her boyfriend is bitten. So he's like infected. And to stop the spread and prevent him from turning, she decapitates him.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's totally in line with reality. And she wears his head around on her belt, like Zelda's pouch in the animated series. And then she fights with a chainsaw, and it's as weird as it sounds.
See, I never played the game, but I feel like so much about that game because of how it became like this cult classic that like you go to conventions, there's a lot of cosplayers that cosplay as her. Such a weird thing, but I'm also into the weirdness. So I'm actually excited for this to come out, because I think that may be my first experience with Lollipop Chainsaw, because I'm like, at this point, I'm just curious to try it to see if it's as good as like people say it is, or if it's just good because of the premise. Like, like I want to discover that for myself.
Well, Game Informer gave the original a 7.5 out of 10.
Pretty good.
And this version is being developed by Dragami Games, which I'm not familiar with their work. They're saying that they're remaking it to be like a definitive version of the game with mostly just gameplay improvements being made. And it's called Lollipop Chainsaw RePOP. And there's a RePOP mode, which actually tones down the violence and replaces like the blood and everything with colorful like pop art effects when like I don't know exactly what it is, but also I saw this. Someone on Threads asked James Gunn if he's involved in this, and he said, "I know nothing about it." So there's that.
So, which I mean is expected. Like usually when
Mhm.
you see these remasters, you rarely have like the original writers come back on
Yeah.
as well. If they're doing new writing to it, that'll be interesting to see how his like James Gunn tone if that's carried through in any way. But it kind of reminds me how you said like the repop mode, I think it's
Mhm.
called in Birds of Prey, the Harley
Oh
Quinn
yeah.
movie, when they had that fight scene.
Well, that was the Suicide Squad,
Oh,
right?
so was it the Suicide Squad?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, they all kind of come
They,
together in my mind. But
both
yeah,
both amazing movies, by the way. Birds of Prey, underappreciated, and then the Suicide Squad.
underappreciated.
Everybody understands that that's amazing.
Exactly. But like that scene where it's just like fun. And when you see well, that iteration of Harley Quinn and the Lollipop Chain or the Lollipop Chainsaw Girl, like
Yeah,
it kind of goes over. So I mean,
she
hey,
does kind of look like Margot Robbie.
yeah, I mean, are we
That
gonna
Juliet.
are we now talking into existence a movie starring Margot Robbie for
I mean, James Gunn has a plenty of history with Margot Robbie, and he wrote this. So who knows? The possibilities are endless.
yeah.
But I do think that they're keeping the story content largely the same for this version, which I
Mhm.
guess it's a good thing if James Gunn is not going to be involved because he has a very distinct writing style. But Lollipop Chainsaw RePOP, the news was that it arrives on Switch and every other major platform on September 25th.
Nice.
So Shovel Knight. Have you played Shovel Knight?
I've played a little bit of Shovel Knight. It was
Okay.
one of those games that I started playing and then for some reason it ended up on my back burner. Like it wasn't that I didn't enjoy it. I think there were just other games that I wanted to play more quickly.
I mean, there's
And I
so many of
haven't
those
gone
games for me.
back. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, this was one of those as well, where it was like, oh, I really like this. I'm gonna go play this other game, and then I'll come back to Shovel Knight, and I just never did. But
exactly.
I put a decent amount of time into it across like 3 different platforms. I think I've played it on like 3DS, Wii U, and Switch now,
Oh,
but I've
I
never
need
beaten
to
it.
go back. You tried. You tried
I've tried.
3 times.
But this is another ready to feel old moment because Shovel Knight turns 10 this year, right?
10? Oh gosh.
But Yacht Club Games is celebrating the occasion in a few different ways. So the way that's most pertinent to this show is that they announced a new mainline Shovel Knight game is now in development. So the tweet from Yacht Club Games Twitter account said, quote, "We're committed to crafting an experience that not only honors the legacy, but also pioneers groundbreaking innovative gameplay mechanics. This isn't just another sequel, it's a bold new adventure. And for those of you eager to uncover what's coming next, you might find subtle clues scattered throughout our previous games. Be sure to play Dig, Pocket Dungeon, and all the games in Treasure Trove to notice the hidden details we've planted. Stay tuned, shovelers."
Oh.
So basically, they're saying go replay these like 7 games that we have developed,
If you want to know more.
or just probably look on the internet. I'm sure somebody
Yeah.
has already done that and posted all the little Easter eggs that are probably scattered all throughout. But I mean, what direction do you think they should go? Should they do another like 2D side-scrolling like retro styled platformer or something else?
I think honestly, like I can't or maybe like a top down. Like
Hmm.
that would kind of be interesting to explore, but I
So like
do
Hotline
like
Miami style?
yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
interesting.
Right? Like I feel like it may be interesting to explore top down. I'm not too familiar with their other games, so I'm not too sure if they do top down games as well. But I think that would be cool. I do like the side scrolling though.
Yeah,
That really
side-scrolling is good.
yeah.
Shovel Knight has appeared in several games. Like he I think was an NPC in Ukulele, like the first
Oh
one.
yeah. Oh, ukulele. Wow. Yeah.
Um, he's in Smash Brothers as a trophy, I
Yeah,
believe.
trophy.
I mean, he's an amiibo.
That is true.
It's the first
That is true.
non-Nintendo developed amiibo.
Was he?
Yeah, because I remember going to PAX West 2014 or 2015 and meeting with Yacht Club, and like they were showing me, God, what game were they showing me? It was like I think the final expansion, or maybe it was, oh God, this might have even been 2017. It was like the final like expansion of Shovel Knight, like the treasure
Oh,
trove. And they're like, oh, we also have the newly announced amiibo if you want to check that out. And I was like, oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, yeah, and you're right. I remember that amiibo. Oh, man, the age of amiibos when they were just taking over
Yeah, they were
everything.
everywhere.
They were everywhere. I
It's,
wanted everyone. But no, like I actually now that think about it, like 10 years, I feel like updating or not updating the art style, but maybe going like another direction with the art style because Shovel Knight has the like an icon it has an Shovel Knight has a name for itself, so I feel
mhm.
like fans that are maybe younger that played it when they were younger would want to revisit it if it kind of looks new. I could also see this game being like, I know it's not necessarily going to just stay on this, or maybe it will just stay on the Switch, or whatever Nintendo platform this comes out on in the future, but I could actually see a Shovel Knight doing really good on Steam, like with
Oh
PC
yeah.
players, if it just has like a really good art style to it.
Well, is it on? It has to be on Steam, right? The
I
first,
feel,
let's see.
hey, I'm surprised sometimes that some
Oh yeah,
games,
it's on Steam,
yeah, like I was surprised Stray wasn't already on the Switch.
right?
Yeah, I was like, wait, isn't it already? And it
But
wasn't.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was 2015, by the way, when the Shovel Knight amiibo was announced. And it was like late August. I think Nintendo may have done a direct, and they announced that like right before PAX West.
Okay,
And
okay,
then they
okay.
like I met with Yacht Club at that PAX West, and they're like, "Hey, we have the amiibo that you just saw for the first time on this direct like yesterday."
Oh, that's
So that was
cool.
kind of cool because Nintendo used to host Nindies at Night, I think it was called, and they would invite everybody to the Seattle Museum of Pop
Oh
or
yeah, okay.
Mopop,
Yeah, yeah.
and they would rent out the venue for the night, and it was super cool. And like you would just walk around. They would like whoever was in charge of like the Indies initiative at Nintendo at that time would like give like a little like welcome message, and then they'd have like people walking around with hors d'oeuvres. You can just go from station to station playing the games. Where I like discovered like Hive Jump and like a few other indies as well. Like it was at that event. It was always a really good event.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Summer Game Fest for indies.
It basically was, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
they always have really good indie events. Like that was also where I at GDC one year. That was where like I discovered games like Bad North and The Messenger was at like their GDC Nindy event. So they always do a great job curating indies that they want to work with.
Yeah, and showcase, well, even this direct that we'll talk
Yes,
about later, but like some really good indies in there.
absolutely. So a game that I talked about, speaking of Summer Game Fest last week, was Yars Rising. I don't know if you got a chance to play this while you were at Summer Game
I did
Fest.
not play Yars Rising.
Okay, so it is a long time coming sequel to Yars Revenge, which was the 1982 Atari game, and this has very little to do with that game aside from just like the name.
The name.
Instead of being like kind of like a side-scrolling space shooting game, you play a woman. I forget. I think her name might be Emmy, and she is a
Okay.
hacker that goes by the handle Yar, and it's like a 2D stealth slash Mega Man inspired Metroidvania,
Ooh.
and it's developed by Way Forward, so it has a great pedigree in terms of development, and it's being published by Atari. So I really liked what I played at Summer Game Fest. I talked about my impressions on last week's episode, so if you want to listen to that, go check it out. But we now know when it's coming out. They were very tight-lipped about that at Summer Game Fest like 2.5 weeks ago. But it has a lot of stuff that's like retro Easter eggs, and they pay homage to Atari's history. Like there's a boss battle that I played called the Missile Commander, and it's
Ooh.
very much just Missile Command that you're playing while still doing like a 2D boss battle, which is kind of cool.
This
And
looks really cool. Like I'm just looking at it right now. Even, like her tattoo is very much Atari.
yeah,
You know. I
but yeah,
love this
there's all
vibe.
kinds of different like Easter eggs and everything. The hacking mini game is based on the original Yars Revenge, so like you have lots of other like classic Atari games. There was like a sign in the background that said Nolan, which an homage to Nolan Bushnell. But yeah, it's coming out September 10th on Switch and every other major platform. You think you're going to check this
Hmm.
one out?
I actually may. I'm looking at it and I'm just loving the vibrant colors as well. Like there's like this mech. I don't know if that was the boss that you fought, but like this mech and how it's glowing,
I think
pink.
it probably is.
Yeah, yeah. Looks really cool. I think also sometimes when you think a game similar to this, like you don't think it's necessarily like she has a pretty casual Yars. She has a pretty casual look to her. You're
Yeah,
thinking usually you would think someone like more suited up and ready to go.
looking like Tron.
Exactly, or trying to emulate Metro like Samus, right?
Hmm.
But I actually like the look of this. And I'm a sucker for like hacking mini games in games, so
Well, I mean, I had a great time with it. Like I said, September 10th, and also it's a way forward. Like I sung the
yeah.
praises of them. They do such great work, especially in the 2D space. The Shantae games are fun.
Yeah.
I really like Contra Operation Galuga, which came out pretty recently. So I'm definitely going to check this out when it comes out in September. So we are going to wrap up the non-Nintendo Direct news with yet another release date for a game that I'm really excited for, and that is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splintered Fate. Have
Oh my
you Do
gosh.
you know anything about this game? Because it was the Apple Arcade exclusive previously, but now it's coming to consoles.
Yeah, I remember when it was out for Apple Arcade. I did not have Apple Arcade. But I have friends that did or do. And I tried it with them and it was so much fun. Um and I love like the old school TMNT games.
Oh, same.
So good. Like so good. And that's exact and it was like it's just yeah. So I'm looking forward to this one, especially because I was playing like with my friends and it was technically their game. I didn't really play through it all, so this is
Mhm.
going to allow me a chance to play through.
So you and I are going to be very good friends for a long time, I can tell, because Ninja Turtles was my first obsession, and I
Like the
love.
movie or
I
game.
mean, I think I got into it through the cartoon, the '87
Okay.
cartoon, which it hit around the time that I was born. So it took me a couple years to get into it. But then I got into the movies, and then I got into the toys, and then I got into the video games. Turtles in Time, one of my all-time favorite games.
So good.
I was lucky enough to get to write the history of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles video games earlier this year, or God, was that late last year? I don't know when it was. I think it was earlier this year that I published it. I did most of the interviews last year, but I got to talk to Kevin Eastman, which was amazing. He was the co-creator of Ninja Turtles, and then several of the developers who worked on Ninja Turtles games over the years, which was really neat. But yeah, I'm so excited for this. I just reviewed what was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade, not Mutant Mayhem, not was God. Now I'm gonna have to look it up. It is Wrath of the Mutants, and
Uh,
don't play that one. It tells you that like, oh, there actually is an art to this like side-scrolling beat 'em up genre, because they didn't really have the art down in that one. But I'm looking forward to this. Basically, for people who aren't under like they don't have a familiarity with this, it was a former Apple Arcade exclusive, came out a couple years ago, and it's essentially just a roguelike set in the TMNT universe,
yeah.
and it looks pretty like Hades inspired. I also did not play it. I downloaded it when it like first came out, and I just, like most games that I download on my phone, they just kind of sit there forever, even though I have an Apple Arcade subscription. But it's Hades inspired. It has like flow based combat. It has a build system that lets you develop your character as you go through the run, so you can kind of like build the turtle that you want to have as like your play style. And the Switch version allows for 4-player co-op and gives better graphics and audio quality. And like I said, it's something that's skyrocketed up my list of games that I'm excited for, and it's coming out on July 17th.
That's actually. Does it have online co-op
I
or
don't think
just
so.
couch?
I think it's just local co-op, but I could be wrong there. I hope I'm wrong there.
Yeah, I mean,
'Cause we're gonna
hey,
play through that entire game if
I
if
would be like, "Hey, Brian, you want to hop
it's.
into that together?" But yeah, no, I'm one of the few Android users. I know that we're a dying breed
Oh
out
wow.
there, but that's exactly why I didn't really put enough hours into that. And that's the thing too. Like I enjoy roguelikes, but it takes a lot from me to start playing a roguelike because I'm like, oh, you know, there's going to be a lot of frustrations.
Yep.
It's going to take probably a lot of time from my part because I'm going to just want to keep going at it until I succeed. So it's like, for me, that was the thing. It was like, I had this short time with it. It was borrowing my friend's phone, but like, I really want to actually get into it. And I feel like this could be a good roguelike for me.
I think
It's
it could
like,
be for me as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
It takes a lot for me to get into a roguelike.
Are
Well,
we
one
the
time
same person?
we might
Like,
be. We very well might be. Well, who's your favorite Ninja Turtle?
Leonardo.
Okay, that's a good that was my favorite for a long, long time. I think as I've gotten older and more jaded, I've gone to Raph. But so I've had a different era of every turtle except Michelangelo. Um,
Ah, no
so
Mikey fan, eh?
when I was young, I liked Donatello just because of the NES game because he had the longer reach and like he
Yeah.
could basically cheese some of the bosses. So he was like the best in that game. So I liked Donatello. Like my favorite color was purple for a while because of Donnie. And then I transitioned to Leonardo because he was the leader and he was like the coolest in my eyes. I had always had a thing for like the lead characters. Like it
Yeah.
was funny because like when we'd had like the sleepovers in like middle school and elementary school, we'd play like Mario Kart and GoldenEye and Star Fox 64.
Oh, such a good game.
We had somebody who liked every single Star Fox character as their favorite. It worked out so perfectly. We never had to fight over who was going to be who. We had one guy who liked Falco, one liked Peppy, one liked Slippy, and then I always liked Fox. So it like always worked out perfectly in that way. GoldenEye, not so much. We were always arguing over who got to be who, but I think you could do duplicates in that because everybody would
You
be
can.
Odd Job.
Well, that's what was everyone trying to be Odd Job? I think everyone was trying to be Odd Job because it is the strategic option, no one could reach. No one sees Odd Job coming.
Yeah, well, that's why we outlawed Odd Job for the
Yeah.
longest time, and nobody wanted to be Jaws because you could see him coming a mile away.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh my
But
gosh.
yeah, Leonardo, top tier pick. Honestly, there's
I
no
mean,
bad picks for the
amongst the
turtles.
four, there's no bad pick at all.
Exactly. But yeah, we very well might be the same person.
I think so.
But we're going to take a break, Camille, and when we get back, we're going to jump with both feet into the news out of this week's Nintendo Direct. We will be right back. By this time of the year, we've typically already had 2 proper Nintendo Directs, but this week actually gave us our first true Nintendo Direct of 2024 so far. And I don't know about you, Camille, but it kind of felt worth the wait. We're going to get into like our overall thoughts on the tail end of this, but worth the wait?
Worth the wait. I felt like this was, that meme where it's like, hold my drink. That was Nintendo, for a long time, especially because of this, post E3 time, but it's still like Summer Game Fest, I like to call it the Summer of Games.
Yes.
In general, where there's a bunch of showcases and presentations. We were all wondering, when is Nintendo going to drop that direct date? And we know, like, usually there's that direct in June, but when they confirmed it, I think, like, for a lot of fans and people who try to stay away from the rumors, like I try to do sometimes, it's like, okay, well, where do they go next for this in-between time where they have that next console waiting for us, but then, they still have to service the holidays of this year, right?
Yes.
So it's like, in true Nintendo fashion, they didn't disappoint. They didn't disappoint at all.
I think they had a really strong showing here, and let's just jump right in. So the first thing that we see is the Mushroom Kingdom. So we're like, all right, we are off to the races. We're starting off on a good foot. And I didn't know what to expect. At first, I was like, okay, maybe they're doing something with like Mario 64. Maybe we're getting like a remake or something like that. Maybe it's just an all new like 3D Mario because, we've been waiting for like a sequel to Mario Odyssey for a while. But no, Mario and Luigi Brothership, which I don't know how I feel about that name. It's a very unique name. But then again, I remember the first time I heard the title Breath of the Wild, and I was like, what is that? But Brothership.
Really? You were okay. We got to talk about that on another conversation.
I mean, hey, Breath of the Wild's my favorite game of all time.
I know, but the name it's so airy. It was
now it sounds normal, but like back then I was like, Breath of the Wild?
That's fair.
What is that?
That's fair. But yeah, when the direct opened and you saw that the Mushroom Kingdom, immediately in my mind I was just like, the art style, like, like a toned down version of Paper Mario. I was like, okay, this is like in that universe or it's something. And then as soon as they opened up on Luigi, I was like, okay, this has to be a Mario and Luigi game.
Yeah. Did you ever play the other Mario and Luigi games?
I did. I played I think it was Dream Team or something like that.
Okay. I
That
think that's the most recent one, right?
Yeah, that was the most recent one. Remember playing one for like I can't remember the name of it. I think it was for like the Game Boy Advance,
Yeah, that
maybe.
was where the series started, was Game Boy Advance.
Yes, and again, I didn't have a Game Boy Advance of my own, so I was borrowing my cousin's Game Boy Advance, and it was just one of those things I never got to go back to. But being a fan of Mario RPG, like Super Mario RPG, it
Hmm.
gave those like hints of that game into this. So it's like I enjoyed my time with Dream Team a lot. And I've been meaning to, again, on the backlog, go back to the other Mario and Luigi games because it feels like such a vibe that I would be into. How
Hmm.
about you? Did you play the
No,
past games?
so I remember I've talked about this because we recently had the Super Mario RPG remake, and I talked about how like I went over to my friend's house who, I had a Super Nintendo. That was my first console I ever owned. My friend had a Super Nintendo, and like, but he had a whole bunch of games I didn't have. So like, he had like the newest Madden game, and I was like, whoa, this is like so much better than the Madden that I had. I had like Madden 95. He had like Madden 97 or something like that, maybe even 98, and it was like just a huge jump forward. And then he had Super Mario All Stars, which was like,
Oh
what,
yeah,
they remade the first three Mario games, and there's also this whole other game that never came to America.
yeah.
And then he had Super Mario RPG, and that was like a revelation. That was like incredible. That was like these graphics, like it opened with a fight against Bowser. What? And I remember just being like blown away by that. And like, I was not even into RPGs at that point. So I had like no concept of what I was seeing. My first RPG I ever played was Pokemon Red and Blue.
Okay,
So
yeah.
like that wasn't until 1998 when I got a Game Boy Color for Christmas alongside a Pokemon Blue copy. Um, so that was like my introduction to RPG. So I missed out on all the SNES RPGs, but I played that and I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like you could literally start the game against like the final boss. And that was really impactful for me, but I never really went back and played like too much of it. I played an okay amount when the remake came out last year, but never really put any time into Paper Mario. I've never even touched a Mario and Luigi game. But I know this is the first entry in the series in 9 years, like first all new
9
entry. They've done some
years.
like
Yeah.
remakes and compilations and everything, but like 9 years, that's a long time for a franchise to be dormant.
I mean, but that is classic Nintendo, right? Like they will pull things that you would least expect it. And I think that was really smart of them to open the direct on this game
Hmm.
in particular because even with the leaks that were happening, I don't think anyone saw this happening. And it was a real good surprise.
Yeah. I mean, there weren't a whole lot of leaks this time around, which was kind of refreshing. There was
It
some
was.
stuff out there, but it was primarily like none of like the big ones leaked. Like everybody was just like, maybe we'll get like this third party announcement or like this indie game is going to be there, but nobody really picked up on like what I would consider like the big 3 or 4 announcements from this direct. I didn't see anybody talking about them ahead of time aside from speculation.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I think for Mario and Luigi Brotherhood, it
Brothership.
or Brothership.
Oh
I
man,
was
you got
like,
to get used to it.
no, you know what it is? It's like when I saw Brothership, immediately I thought of, I don't know if you know this anime Full Metal Alchemist
I
because it's
know
like
of it. I'm not
yeah.
familiar with it though.
So there's a Brotherhood, like there's like two versions of it, and one's Brotherhood. So
Okay.
that's where my mind went to, and now I can't get it out. So I need to throw that away and think Brothership. But I think it's a really interesting. It's the first one in 9 years, so this is like a really good opportunity for Nintendo to introduce new fans to this
Hmm.
that might have been sleeping on it, especially because it was like a handheld series. So it's great to see this coming to like their primary console, right? And I think I'm really curious to see how many people like kind of flock to this for that experience. Like, because there is a difference between like Mario RPG, or even like Paper Mario, that is like more on the RPG side, and
Hmm.
this that has elements of that, but it's also like very different and like kind of hard to explain because like you're doing things like tag team, and it's like it's not complete RPG feelings. So I think it could kind of cater to both audiences here, and is probably going to be a bigger release than I think people would anticipate. Like, we're going to talk about the full direct, but there were so many things in this, and I'm trying to think of like, okay, what is that big moment of the year or the next year and a half for Nintendo? And I see like 4 big moments. Like, I can't just see the one. Like, if they were going to come out with like amiibos or like something that they're going to cater a lot of love into it, like I can't just see that one. And I think this is going to be one of those moments, one of the 4 moments that Nintendo's going to probably go a little bit harder on than we would initially expect.
Yeah, and I mean, it has the names Mario and Luigi right in the title, which I think is a little bit more approachable than
Yeah.
something like Super Mario RPG, which, it has Super Mario in the title, but also has RPG, which immediately I think turns off a lot of people. Like, hardcore gamers love RPGs, but like the casual gamers who are just like, oh yeah, I like Mario, they
Yeah.
see Mario RPG and they're like, maybe not for me.
Exactly. Or even like, Nintendo obviously caters to a lot of younger audience. I think there may be a lot of parents that may be like, oh, I don't know if they would understand, like their kids or whatever, like nephews, nieces would appreciate a Mario RPG, but a Mario and Luigi game, like I could totally see someone's parent picking that up, thinking that it's like a main title Mario game, like, a side scrolling platform or, a 3D experience. And just introduce a kid to RPG elements by
Yeah.
accident.
Little do they know they're
Little do they know.
giving them the gateway drug to role playing games, which is just going to alter the course of their lives. Because that was what Pokemon was for me. It just,
Yeah.
next thing I knew, I was playing Final Fantasy X and pouring like, hundreds of hours into that game. So be
Once you go
careful.
in, yeah, once you go into an RPG world, you can't go back. For me, it was Secret of Mana.
Oh, wow.
And that was the thing. It was my cousins in Boston actually that had the other Super Nintendo games like
Hmm.
that I didn't have. So Mario All Star was a part of that. Secret of Mana was a part of that as well. And then Mario RPG is something I rented through Blockbuster, and I was like,
Man.
I love this. This is so good, and I never turned back since.
Shout out Blockbuster, my first part-time job.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, such a good part-time job, I would imagine.
It was fun. And I wish I still had my polo for it though. So you have this little like blue polos with the Blockbuster like logo
The
on it.
yellow, yeah.
That would be sick to like just wear out. Like I think people would appreciate that. I feel like
Yeah.
I'm sure I could find it at like a thrift store or something.
I
There's
mean,
got to be
that could be
everywhere.
big money if you find it somewhere in your house. That could go into a museum.
Oh, I'm almost certain I threw it away as soon as I quit that job. So in this game, Mario and Luigi travel to Ship Shape Island, which is described as part ship, part island, and then they explore the world of Concordia. And then this time around, they have Bros moves, which I would have pronounced that Brothers moves, but they pronounce it Bros moves.
You got to
Because
be hip for the kids, all
does
right?
anybody say Super Mario Bros? They say Super Mario Brothers, right? Like, have you heard
Yeah.
somebody say Super Mario Bros? Like,
You know what? I have heard,
okay.
I have heard someone in games media say it, and it was weird to me. Like, it was very weird. I was like, but maybe we're not young anymore, Brian. Maybe this is what the
I know
kids are.
I'm not.
This is what the kids are saying. They're all about the bros now, not brothers.
Bros before brothers. That's the
Yeah,
set. So they
exactly.
have Bros moves, which let them get past obstacles in the world, and then Bros attacks, which they say, quote, puts a dynamic twist on turn-based combat. So, I mean, which Mario RPG franchise is your favorite? Is it Super Mario RPG, Paper Mario, or Mario and Luigi?
Ooh, that's really hard because Thousand Year Door is so good. Um, but I would have to say, hmm, you know what? I'm gonna say Paper Mario.
Oh, wow.
Ooh,
Okay.
but then I don't. That's a hard one. But you know what? I'll say Paper Mario because remember that so well going through that and like very specific moments in that game. Um, so I do like the idea of the bros moves. I'm just curious, and I think we'll probably get more answers later on if they have any plans to open up the idea of the Mario and Luigi games to make it like co-op esque. Like,
Hmm.
how like a mainstream Mario games, like if you had like my nephew, for example, he'll sometimes watch me play them, and like I don't want him ruining my game file, but I'll let him play like as
Yeah,
that.
game files before family every single
Yeah,
time.
that's also another saying. But yeah, like I will have him play as like the assisted role. So like if you remember Super Mario Galaxy, you could have like player two collect all of like the little stars in
Yeah,
each
yeah,
level
yeah.
with
The
the
star
Wii
bits.
star bits. Thank you. So I wonder if they're gonna have like a little bit of an element of like, oh, you could do this with this other person. Like I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, there are like those, like I said, the bro moves where they are like teaming up to do stuff. So I don't know if there's
Yeah.
any. Well, we have a lot to learn about this game.
Yeah, and the bro moves like it's kind of like echoed throughout like the Mario and Luigi series. Like they have like bro-esque because you control both of them, so it's
Hmm.
like I could see that evolution. It would just be cool if you had the option to introduce a second player. Like
Yeah,
in
I
the
mean,
yeah, I feel like it would be. I'm not a game developer, but I feel like that's easy to do.
yeah. Whenever I have my coworker Kyle Hilliard on this show, we always say stuff like that. And we're like, yeah, game development's easy. Why don't they just do that?
Yeah,
Because it's very clearly not easy.
obviously, this would be so easy to do. Just
Yeah,
give us options.
just give us everything we ever wanted.
Exactly.
But Mario and Luigi Brothership comes out on Switch on November 7th, so that is one of the big holiday releases for Nintendo. Next up, we got the Nintendo World Championships NES edition, which I'm very excited for this because I loved like the NES Remix series that was on Wii U and then eventually came to 3DS.
Yeah.
This seems almost like the spiritual successor. By the way, I wish that we would get the NES Remix games ported over to Switch because they would be so much fun. I've also been impatiently waiting for an SNES version of that concept, and
Yes.
it just has never happened because you sound like you kind of had a similar video game upbringing as me.
Yeah.
So you were probably much more nostalgic for the SNES than you are the NES.
Yes, for sure. I feel like my dad like loved the NES and I was like the SNES kid. So for me, yes, this world championship, it is very appealing to me because I'm very competitive. I'm actually really big into Tetris 99, by the way.
Ooh,
Like really big. Like I play it late at night. And I'm East Coast. So when I play at late at night, it's actually like early morning
hmm,
in Japan. So I go up against a lot of Japanese players.
really good players,
They're,
probably.
they're amazing. Like almost all of them are really amazing. So like I go to sleep so frustrated and angry, but at least I feel fulfilled inside. So there's a little bit of a competitiveness in me when it comes to like going through these games, and obviously like World Championship just has a legacy on its own. Like growing up and remembering what that meant and what that was, to feel like I could be recognized on like some level. Like I'm thinking Super Mario Brothers would be the one like speed running that.
Hmm.
Like I think I could really excel in.
Well, I mean, here's your chance because so there's the new trailer showed off survival mode and legend challenge. So survival mode lets you race against ghost data of other players to try to get through each round. It seems like they eliminate half the players each round, and
Yeah.
it like your goal is to be the last person standing. And then legend challenge has you take on super tough challenges like getting through the original Super Mario Brothers with one life. So that's coming right up. Like that's July 18th. So that week is actually shaping up to be pretty busy.
It's a busy
Um,
one.
so the July 17th earlier in the show we talked about TMNT Splintered Fate, and then one day later we get the NES edition of Nintendo World Championships.
Yeah, I feel
So
like I'm gonna put a scrunchie in my hair, start dressing like I'm from the 90s, 80s, and like just have a retrospect weekend,
oh man,
living
just
in nostalgia all weekend
that
long.
really is it. Yeah, because like you're channeling like all of your favorite stuff from the 90s. Oh man, that's a
Exactly.
good idea.
Yeah.
So are you you've mentioned anime on this show already. Are you into the anime Fairy Tale?
That is the one. So I've never Fairy Tale is one of the animes I've never really got into. It's weird, although I'm a huge Legend of Zelda fan. It's like the only fantasy esque thing that and Fable is probably the only two final like fantasy esque things. Yeah, that I like get into. So like that
No
goes with
Skyrim?
No,
Oh,
I don't know
wow.
why. Yeah, I don't know why. It's just something about it that, like, I don't know. So that goes with TV shows as well.
Mhm.
I have one anime, uh, Sword Art Online that I got into that's like fantasy esque, and then I cut all the other ones off. Like I wasn't even going to give them a try, and Fairy Tale was one of them.
Okay, so I mean, then we're both in the same boat on this one because I have no idea about this anime. But they announced Fairy Tale 2, which is an action RPG based on that anime. And based on the description, it is a retelling of the Alvarez Empire arc from the Fairy Tale story, which, from what I understand, is like the climax of the story. So
Yeah,
that's
that's what
kind of
I
cool.
understand too. I mean,
Uh,
hey, if you are you into anime at all, or
a very little bit. Like
okay,
that's where I think our interests diverge. I'm more into like the superhero movies and
I
like
love those too.
okay, well there we go. But like I
We
I
found our
do
friendship again.
I do like things like Game of Thrones. That's another fantasy thing that
Okay.
you probably are not a fan of if you don't like fantasy. But yeah, like I like a lot of the superhero movies, a lot of Star Wars stuff. That's kind of like my anime.
Okay, okay, cool. You know what? We found our friendship again, even though we lost it there with the anime stuff. But Fairy Tale actually is the creator of Fairy Tale created One Piece. So if you want a little bit of
Oh,
history
okay.
about that, that's a little relationship there.
Yeah, well, there's only a few episodes of One Piece if you want to watch that. Like not over 1,000
Yeah,
or
no,
anything.
not at all. You know, you just watch one and you know exactly what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my god, I've tried to watch One Piece and I'm like, I can't do this. I can't keep up with like how many episodes there are. But yeah, so Fairy Tale 2 has real time battles with magic that fuses with the affinities of other party members, and it is coming out on Switch, PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, and PC this winter. So, since I mean, does Final Fantasy fall in that category of not being a
See,
fantasy person?
that's where I was like, oh wait, because I do like Final Fantasy, so I don't know, man.
So this next, lots of Apple Arcade exclusives coming to Switch. So this was a 2021 Apple Arcade exclusive from Mistwalker, which is the studio founded and still currently run by the creator of Final Fantasy, Hironobu Sakaguchi. It's Fantasian Neo Dimension. So the core conceit of Apple Arcade games is that they are mobile games with zero microtransactions. So what I've played of this on my phone, this is actually one of the ones that I did download and actually checked out. It was awesome. It's
Really?
really great turn-based RPG. So it has quality of life improvements over traditional like JRPG format. Like you can wander around, you can like set up this one thing where it actually banks all of your random encounters, and then like once you hit a certain number you just fight them all at once, so you don't have to worry about like, oh my god, stop interrupting my
Mm,
exploration. So it's like there's a little counter that appears that's like how many encounters you've had, and then you can choose like, okay, now I just want to fight all of them and clear my bank basically. And I think there is a max that you can have on that, but yeah, it's a really cool JRPG. All of the environments are like handcrafted dioramas, so it's like a really pretty RPG as well. And this is the studio that brought us things like Blue Dragon, which was Mistwalker working with Akira Toriyama, which is really cool. And also, I think one of the few times that Game Informer has had Akira Toriyama art on our cover, which was when we
oh,
had Blue Dragon on the cover. And then also one of my personal favorites and underappreciated JRPG, Lost Odyssey.
what's Lost Odyssey?
So that's what I call the single player Final Fantasy XI that we never got. Because this was
Oh,
shortly after Hironobu Sakaguchi left Square Enix. He founded Mistwalker. And then around, I believe it was shortly after we got Final Fantasy 11 and 12, the Xbox 360 exclusive Lost Odyssey came out. And it is Final Fantasy is all get out. It is so Final Fantasy. Um, and it, like, the amnesiac protagonist with wild hair, and like, the
that
political
one strand of
intrigue,
hair I'm
the
seeing.
one
Yeah.
the one strand of hair that they didn't quite have hair physics down at that point, because it's just like he'll be leaning over and that one strand of hair is just permanently like glued to his forehead. His name's Kayam, but like it has one of the coolest openings of any RPG you'll ever play. I love that game so much. So the fact that this is the same team from that like gives me so much confidence. I've heard from people who've played more than me. I've only played a few hours of that on Apple Arcade. The people who've played more than I have of it said it's very good. And it's coming to Switch, PS5, PS4, and Xbox Series X/S, as well as Steam this winter. So I'm very much looking forward to that. Uh, are you going to check this one out?
I was actually thinking like, so the last like RPG that's like a JRPG other than like, Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth was probably and remake like the Final Fantasy games was probably like Three Houses, which is so sad to say out loud. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
That's not
Um
that far. That's not that far back.
it's pretty far when you think of how old the Switch is.
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
It's pretty far.
Well,
It's
if
pretty
it
far.
helps you like get over the hump of like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready for another JRPG. From what I understand, Sakaguchi actually relocated to Honolulu, so it's actually an HRPG. It's a Hawaiian
Oh,
RPG.
okay. Okay. Yeah. So I may actually hop into this, but then now I'm looking at Lost Odyssey. I'm like, where's this? Is
I
this
mean,
available
Lost
on?
Odyssey is only on Xbox 360, but it is backward compatible on Xbox Series X,
Okay.
and it slaps so hard. So good. I highly recommend Lost Odyssey. I would love for that to come to Switch. I would love for it to come to Steam even, just so I could have it on my Steam Deck.
Yeah.
I think it's only on Xbox 360. So like it's available for purchase on like the Xbox Marketplace, and like you can play it on your Xbox One or Xbox Series X. But yeah, that more people should play Lost Odyssey, and I'm hoping more people will play Fantasian when it comes out this winter. So next up on the Nintendo Direct was Nintendo Switch Sports, which for people who are not familiar was the 2022 successor to Wii Sports, which everybody on the planet played, and Wii Sports Resort, which not enough people played because that was awesome. In winter 2022, they gave us a free update that added golf to the package. And now we're getting another free update. I just assumed that Nintendo forgot about this game, but you can play basketball starting this summer when they add that. You can play local 2-on-2, or you can do 3-point challenges or other shooting challenges. And coming this summer as a free update. I actually have not jumped in to Switch Sports, but were you a Wii Sports sicko like I was back in the day?
Oh yeah, I think like everyone was Wii Sports sicko. Like having so much bowling, and I remember
Oh
I
yeah.
actually threw my
Oh no.
yeah, I threw it. Luckily, it didn't hit the TV. But yeah, there were I had to use the straps. I was one of those people that they put out that like, oh, here, you clip it on.
So you're the
That was
reason we had
for
to sit through
me.
those messages.
Exactly. That was me.
My friend, one time I had my friend over, this was when I was in college, and we had a couple of beverages, and we were playing WarioWare Smooth Moves, and there was like
Oh,
the different
dude.
poses and different like hand and like configurations that you had to hold the Wii remote in. And there was one where like you had to like freeze at a certain point, and she froze, and the controller slipped out of her hand and just went airborne, and we just both like look at each other frozen while we're waiting for the, because we don't know where the controller is, we're just waiting for the controller to come back down and smash into the ground, and sure enough it did.
Oh no.
But yeah, it was that's the closest I've come to like a Wii remote catastrophe. But you
Yeah.
seem like you threw yours directly into the wall.
Yeah, bowling. It like just missed the TV, but I do enjoy the Nintendo Sports. I do enjoy it. I would say tennis always my go-to OG.
Okay.
However, when I saw this announcement for basketball, I was like, okay, I'm here for it.
Yeah, I don't know how well it's gonna work. Like, do you have to
The
dribble?
dribbling,
Do you
yeah,
have to
you
like?
do have to dribble. You have to
Okay, so
like,
you're just constantly like doing that
yeah,
with your okay, and then you pass obviously to
yeah,
your teammate, and then shoot is probably pretty self-explanatory in terms of the
exactly.
motions you do. But like, it's interesting that it's local 2-on-2. I wonder if there's any kind of like against the AI or anything like that, or does it have to be like two people standing next to each other moving their hands up and down like that?
I'm pretty sure they have it where it's like maybe a challenge, like trying to get the most baskets, up against the computer. And I think that's like the part I would enjoy rather than going
Yeah.
against a friend. It's always like a little bit silly when it's a friend, unless it's like those sports that are not too hard to like a hard of a reach for the Switch, right? So like bowling,
Like
tennis, like
bowling
those
and
are
tennis, yeah.
exactly those are like easy to make sense of, right?
Yeah,
They
bowling, I
should.
mean, that took off so hard on the Wii Sports.
It was so good.
Even
And
my
just the
grandmother was playing it.
I mean, just the anime. And that's the thing I like about like Wii Sports and like Nintendo Switch Sports is like the animations, which was hard for me for Nintendo Switch Sports because we were so in love with our Miis. Just like when you're
Mm.
bowling and the pins, like they're the like your Miis or like the Miis that you have on your system, and they like just jump and like turn after
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you hit the
yeah.
strike. But yeah, so I, I mean, I just was hoping for an update that would have been like, and by the way, your Miis are back. Like, like just bring the Miis back.
So you can't create a me
You
in Nintendo
can,
Switch Sports?
but I want the me look.
Oh,
You
I
know what
got
I
you. Yeah, because
mean?
they don't have like the full me look. You're right. You're right. Now that I'm thinking about it in my head, I always feel like whenever I think about Nintendo Switch Sports, I just overwrite my memories of Wii Sports onto it.
Yeah. It's like whatever happened. that's that's kind of like the game for the whole franchise that everyone will always like revert to. It
Oh,
could be 10
definitely.
years from now and everyone will still be talking about Wii
I
Sports.
mean, it's been almost 20 years since Wii Sports came out,
Oh
and we're
my
still talking
gosh.
about it. I know.
Bring back the balancing board. No, don't bring that
Don't
back.
do that. I don't
Don't
need
do
any
that.
more like of those. Like I feel like everybody had one of those just sitting around their house or their apartment at
Yeah.
some point. It's like
Yeah.
that and like the Guitar Hero controllers.
Oh, well, the whole like Rock Band sets, like
I still have
how
mine.
my mom would yell at me all the time, like, "Oh, can you move this stuff?" And it's like, "But I'm gonna jam out, mom. You don't know me.
You don't know
Just,
me.
just let me jam out."
So that update is coming as a free update, adding basketball to Nintendo Switch Sports this summer. The next announcement was one I'd not heard of. I don't know if this was a full on announcement or just one that I just missed or whatever, but it's called Mio Memories in Orbit. And you play as an android that can pull off like these like kind of really fluid traversal moves in combat. And it's a 2D RPG that really gave off like Ori vibes for me. Am I off on that
Yeah.
comparison?
No, not at all. Beautiful. Like it definitely has like a coziness, but like also that is a little grim.
A
Like
little
there's this,
sinister.
yeah, right. And the art style is just so beautiful.
Hmm.
Um, it's a roguelike, right?
I don't know. I thought it was just like a 2D RPG, but I
Maybe.
don't know. It looks beautiful, whatever it is. It's one that I'm like, oh, I'll check that out whenever it comes out, which is coming to Switch in 2025. So we've got a little bit of time before we have to like know everything there is to know about this game.
Yeah, it was just like one of the ones I think that also stood out that people were talking about because it does look so different, but very intriguing as well.
Hmm. So they kind of started on a run of games based on cartoons at this point. And the first one was Disney Illusion Island, which came out last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And they're doing the Mystery of Monoth free update. So clues are popping up all around. You help out Dash Dolphin, which I did not play Disney Illusion Island, so I don't know any of these words. You can play solo or co-op, and just like in like the original, and you're going around. And it's a brand new detective mystery in Disney Illusion Island that is out now. Hello Kitty Island Adventure, another Apple Arcade exclusive. So you create a character, you go to this island with all the Sanrio characters, and then it's like you get to this island where it's supposed to have like this theme park, and like everything's abandoned. And you're like, oh, what happened? And it basically turns into Animal Crossing, where you have to like rebuild the island with like the Hello Kitty characters. You can craft, you can create your theme park, you can collect different uh, like wildlife around the island. So it's kind of like Animal Crossing in that way as well. The goal is to create the ultimate island paradise. That is coming to Switch next year. Then we got a game that completely hit me out of nowhere, Looney Tunes Wacky World of Sports. Were you like a Looney Tunes fan growing up?
I was a Looney Tunes fan, like cartoons would just run all the time. So I
Yeah.
think it kind of forced itself into my childhood. Hey, I welcome it. This game, though, there was also this game for the Game Boy Color that I owned. I feel like it was like a family member that just knew I got a Game Boy Color and wanted me to play a game, and they probably got like a really bargain game for the Game Boy Color for like my birthday or something. I would play that game nonstop.
Do you remember what the box art looked like?
I don't
What
remember the box art, but it was pretty much like Daffy. You could play as Daffy, or Bugs Bunny or Lola
Taz
Bunny.
and
Yeah,
okay.
and then like every level, you were going through another set of like their universe. So it was like a film set.
So I think I may have found it. It came out in 1992. And it was re-released for Game Boy Color 7 years later. You could play as Daffy, Tweety, Porky Pig, Taz. Speedy Gonzales is a little problematic, but the Roadrunner and Bugs Bunny. So yeah, that sounds like the one we're talking about.
Yeah, it was so much fun. And when I saw this trailer, I was like, man, like this art style is really cool. This is fun. I'm probably not going to play it, but I do have a nephew and niece, and I feel like I would just force them to play it so I could just try it out.
I mean, it looks fun, right? Like it's just arcade versions of sports. So you get arcade versions of basketball, soccer, tennis, golf, and you play as your favorite Looney Tunes characters and different locations from the Looney Tunes universe. So I mean, it looks like it could be fun. The art style is a little interesting. It's like
Not your thing.
kind of, I don't know, it looks kind of bargain binny, if
I
that's
mean,
not
hey,
rude to say.
I mean, I get what you're saying. Yes. But I'm kind of here for it. I do like when cartoons don't try to look like more than they look as a cartoon. Do you
Sure.
get what I'm saying?
I feel like this falls short of Looney Tunes cartoon though. Like we've seen like South Park. They put out like their
Yeah.
game and it looks like you're playing a South Park episode, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, the Hello Kitty Island Adventure, you could say probably same thing. Maybe it goes a little bit even past like the visuals of the Hello Kitty cartoon. This looks like maybe it could have come out on PS2, PS3, maybe.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. I could see that. I could see that.
But it's coming to Switch and then also PS5 and Xbox this fall. So, are you going to check out any of these cartoon-based games that they gave us?
Um, I'm going to force my niece and nephew to check them out, and
Okay,
I
all of
will
them.
probably check them out. No, not all of them. Probably Illusion Island, because that also looks really cool, the art
And you can
style.
play co-op.
And you could play co-op. And then just because just because I want to try Wacky World of Sports, that as well.
Solid picks. I mean, Hello Kitty Island Adventure did get very good reviews, by the way. Like, and it's
Yeah.
it's an Apple Arcade thing, so no microtransactions. Everything's added for free, and it won Apple Arcade's official Game of the Year last year.
Did it?
Yeah, like it was
Oh,
a
I
big
didn't know
deal in
that.
like it basically was Animal Crossing, and so like people loved that, and it really took over like a segment of like the gaming population, which was very kind of unforeseen given the fact that it's
Mhm.
like a Hello Kitty game. So you're like, oh well, it's probably going to be like cutesy and not very like appealing to like seasoned gamers. But like I've heard multiple people be like, oh yeah, this game took over my life for a few weeks.
And I could see that. I mean, anything Animal Crossing-esque probably could do that to you. And when you throw in iconic characters that already has a fan base, why
Hmm.
not? I never, and again, this is going to sound a little controversial.
Oh
I
boy.
I wasn't too much into Animal Crossing. You're
Oh, we're
right.
clipping this and putting this up on.
Oh, sorry.
No,
I'm
I'm just
sorry.
kidding.
No, it was just something about, I don't know. I feel like when when it was Animal Crossing was first announced on Game Boy, or sorry, GameCube.
Hmm.
It was one of those games like I wanted to try it, but I didn't own a GameCube and I never
Gotcha.
got into it. And then when it came out on the Switch and like all the other iterations, it was like there was always another game that I would play. So for me, it was Breath of the Wild. I was just playing nonstop.
That's fair, like it's a very good game. But yeah, so the next one up is Among Us. I never got into Among Us. That was one that like I was like too busy playing other games, and like I
Yeah.
tried playing it one time and I was like, not for me.
Mhm.
But they're giving a free update that adds the Noisemaker, which is a character that alerts players when they're eliminated, which based on what I know of that game, that could very well change how that game works. As well as the Tracker, who can plant a tracking device on any character. Again, probably meta changing in that regard. And then there's also the Phantom, who is an imposter character that can turn invisible. Do you have any familiarity with Among Us? Or did you get into this when it was like at its peak?
Yeah, I did get into it when it was at its peak. And again, during the blip, as I like to call it, pandemic. But because it was just really good for connecting friends that you haven't seen for a long time and doing
Definitely.
something fun. But saying that, I haven't played any of the new modes. Like, so even if I'm playing with friends now, I'm going back to the original modes where they
Okay.
don't have the extra characters. I don't know if this is something where you would be able to like if they're automatically played in like the OG mode or like these are just things that you kind of turn on in the game in order to have these other roles. But it does sound interesting. Definitely will change up the meta.
Hmm.
I'm not like the Phantom one's like weird to me. I'm just like I feel like that's a cheat. Like that shouldn't be allowed.
Well, yeah, that's why. I mean, that's why I was asking. I was like, this sounds as somebody who didn't really put any real time into Among Us that this would like completely flip the game on its head, like with these three abilities. Like,
Yeah.
I just wanted to get your expert opinion here
Oh,
of how different these characters are going to make the experience if you're playing a mode with them in it. Presumably, like they're not in every mode.
I think it will make it very, very different. I'm more
Okay.
interested. I think like a good role that they added is the tracker role. I think that's very interesting because you have to get close enough to another character and still have them not suspect you
Oh,
as
interesting.
like
Yeah, that's a
tracking
good
them, right?
point.
So like you really have to play these mind games.
So I don't think I'm going to get into this game at all still. But I mean, it does seem like it would be an interesting addition to the overall experience.
Hmm.
But,
Ooh.
we talked about, I don't think this is the same guy that we were talking about before, but you talked about famous anime creators and Farmagia. Do you know anything about this game?
It looked so weird and interesting, like the farming of these monsters.
Yeah, so it's from Hiro Mashima, who was the creator of Fairy Tale.
Yeah, yeah, that would do it. That would do it.
So it's an all new adventure. It's Farmagia. That's how I like saying it like that. Uh,
Fromage, yeah.
it's like the kind of like the trend of like new Japanese properties to sound Italian. I don't know why. Like we have Metaphor Rifantasio, and now we have Farmagia. But
Are
this is
you Italian?
I am not Italian.
I'm
No.
like I'm like, "You're doing it." I'm not Italian either, so I think you're doing it well, I don't know.
No, I'm not Italian. But I don't know. The names just sound Italian to me. What can I say? Like I sound like I could order this at an Italian restaurant,
It does.
especially Rifantasio.
Fancy. This kind of like this game reminded me of not Dynasty Warriors, but kind of Dynasty Warriors esque, and like a farm sim
Yeah.
because
So
they showed like the fox, and I thought it was like you're growing the fox, but I thought it was corn, and I'm like, why is corn orange? When I like first saw it, I'm like, what's happening here?
so for people who haven't seen this trailer, so a demon takes over your world, and then like you basically, as a humble farmer, use your farm to fight back. And you can grow and like collect resources, and then you explore the world, and then you, as farmers do, command an army against monsters. It looks very weird, very off the wall. It's very strange that we have two Hiro Mashima creations in the same Nintendo Direct. But yeah, comes to Switch on November 1st. I don't know too much more about this one, but we had a lot of anime inspired games on this Nintendo Direct, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, we do usually have like, well, not anime inspired, but like JRPGs or anime s games in every direct, right?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
But then we went a complete 180. I don't know if you had the love that I had for Donkey Kong Country back on the SNES. One of my all-time favorite franchises back in the day, and a game that I have been wanting to come over to Switch for the longest time. We got its sequel. We got Tropical Freeze like pretty early on in the Switch life cycle.
Yeah.
Now we are getting Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, which was the Wii game that came out that brought Donkey Kong Country back. It was eventually ported to 3DS, but this seems to be the Wii version and the 3DS kind of coming together in this one
Mhm.
because you can do like solo or co-op just like you can in the Wii or the Wii version, and then there's 80 levels plus the additional ones that they added for 3DS, and presumably you're not going to have to shake your Wii remote like you did in the Wii version to make Donkey Kong roll or throw stuff. Now I'm assuming you can just press the button like you could in the 3DS version. So this is really like best of both worlds. They've upgraded the character models and the textures, and like I looked at a side-by-side comparison of this version versus the character models of the Wii version. They redid the character models. These are not just up-reses. They redid the character
Really?
models.
I just thought it was like up resolution. Let me see this because like that was the thing I did. Let me Wii version. I did. Oh wow! I didn't realize that they.
Yeah, there's a graphics
Yeah,
comparison that
yeah.
it's
Oh my
very
god.
different, right? Like your memory, that's the trick of any of these like
Yeah.
HD remasters or remakes, is like making it so like when you go back and play the original, or like if you play this game when you played the original, it's almost filling in the blanks of
Mhm.
like what your brain remembers. Because like I remember it looking like Donkey Kong Country Returns HD looked on the
Yes.
direct.
Yeah.
Then I go back and look at the footage on Wii and I'm like, whoa,
Wait a
how did
second.
we live
Yeah.
like this?
What is this? What
This
what
is
time
clearly
period was this?
this is clearly the Game Boy Advance version.
Yeah, it's actually insane to see because it's like, yeah, I remember it in my mind as it appeared in HD. But it's like, yeah, you go back and you're like, yeah, these are new character models as well, which is
Yeah.
it's crazy that they're putting this much love into it. And of course, having like all the extras that you did in the DS version as well, right? Like it just makes sense. It's weird because it's like we got its prequel before we got the actual like first version of it. But I love Donkey Kong, and Donkey Kong Country. I was actually, when I was watching this reveal, I was like, when they switched to the mine carts, I'm like,
Hmm.
actually, that's probably one of the most stressful moments in gaming,
Oh my God,
like
yes.
the mine carts. And then I was like, or was it actually going through the barrels? Like, you know, that one
Yeah, the
level with
timing.
oh my gosh, the one level with all the barrels and you're trying to get the timing right.
You
And
have to shoot
because
between the bees.
yes, and you're trying to get the spell out Kong as well because you
Oh,
want that. Like it's so hard. And I think when I went to Donkey Kong Country 2 or Donkey Kong Country, yeah, 2 because you have Dixie Kong.
Dixie's
You
Conquest.
yeah, you have that like propeller that Dixie does with her hair. So it's kind of like the saving grace.
Yeah, it was almost like how Peach could float, or
Exactly.
Princess Toadstool could float in Mario 2.
Exactly. Where it's like when you go to any Mario, like Donkey Kong Country game where it's just Donkey Kong and Diddy, I'm always just like, can they help us out with like just a little bit of like a little safety net, like a little bit of a little jump run, something in case like I feel like my heart's gonna like explode out of my chest because it's so stressful right now trying to be on this minecart or trying to like make the barrels go. But I was really excited about this one, and I wasn't expecting it as well.
No, I thought we were gonna, like, I've been saying for a while that we're probably gonna get a Donkey Kong game as a Switch launch or Switch 2 launch title.
Hmm.
This might put that in jeopardy because this is coming out January 16th. So like this is early next year.
Yeah.
Presuming that we get a Switch 2 in like the first half of next year, this might be too quick of a turnaround to go from like a Donkey Kong remake or remaster to a new Donkey Kong game. So I think that might rule out my prediction of getting a Donkey Kong game as a Switch launch title, Switch 2 launch title, if it is in fact like the first half of next year.
I'm not too sure how Tropical Freeze did on the Switch. Now that I think about it, I'm curious because Donkey Kong, even though the character is iconic, I don't know if it holds that much like strength for new like younger gamers as
So
it
it's the
does
30th best-selling game on the
for the
Switch. So
Switch.
it's
Yeah.
sold 4.62 million copies. But no, I agree with you. However, I think with the Mario movie, it
Yes.
really boosted Donkey Kong's profile.
Exactly. And I think their commitment to the movies and like that universe, it only makes sense to and this is the thing, like I really admire, like makes sense to bring these games back to a newer audience, a new generation to see how they respond to it and to really like It's just good marketing. It's good marketing. So in terms of a new Donkey Kong Country, I would actually say I could see us still getting a new one, but probably in 2026.
Yeah, probably give it a little bit of a buffer. I
Yeah.
would love a new Donkey Kong Country game. Like, it's been such a long time coming. Like, the last one was Tropical Freeze on
Yeah.
Wii U, which I think was 2013, maybe
Yeah.
2012, 2013. I think it was 2013. But I loved that one. That was one of the greatest platformers I've ever played.
Mhm.
But Donkey Kong Country Returns is pretty good as well, and that's coming to Switch on January 16th of next year. Another HD remake, Dragon Quest III HD 2D remake. They still got to figure out that naming convention. But this is the chronological start of the Erdrick trilogy, which is Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3. But 3 was considered a prequel in terms of the story. I've actually played this. At Summer Game Fest, I met up with Square Enix and I got to play it for about 45 minutes. It is absolutely beautiful in HD 2D. Basically, you're going on a quest to defeat this monster called Baramos, and they modernized the turn-based battles, which they desperately needed to, because I tried playing like as is, because you can adjust like the sliders of like how fast you want the fights to be. You can turn on or off auto battle.
Oh, that's cool.
But if you're playing like standard, it's just like, what are we doing here, guys? Come on,
Yeah.
let's get going. Let's go. And thankfully, you can speed it up, turn on auto battle. That makes it a little bit better. But I will say that, like, I had a good time exploring. But this, despite its modernizations, despite how beautiful it is, despite the updates to the story elements they're doing, this is very much a game that was developed originally in like 1988, which is when it came to Famicom in Japan. And I think it was 4 years that we had to wait to get it on NES in the West. And it certainly feels like that sometimes where I was playing. I was
Okay.
just like, oh boy, this is a game that's more than 3 decades old for sure. But they did some good updates. I'm interested to see how people pick this up, because I can see people being like, why did I spend my money on this? Like, this feels like an ancient game at this point. But I could also see people who have had this curiosity of playing Dragon Quest 3, because everybody hears how good that game is,
Mhm.
going back to this and being like, oh yeah, this is awesome. Because like, I tried playing the NES version and it was just prohibitive with its
Yeah.
approachability. And now it's like, okay, this is a little bit easier to jump into. The graphics are amazing. I could see that being the case with this one, but I could also see people being like, oh yeah, everybody says Dragon Quest 3 is so good. And then they go and play it and they're like, what is
Ugh,
this?
yeah, it feels dated, right?
Yeah, but I think they may have made enough modernizations that it actually does appeal to people who maybe see the NES version and are like, I'm not playing that.
Yeah. And to clarify, you didn't play the original, or did you?
I did not play the original. No,
Okay, okay.
I didn't get into RPGs until Pokemon, and then after that, Final Fantasy X. So
Okay, okay, okay.
this
So
was a
yeah,
full decade later.
yeah. So for me, I haven't played the original as well, but because I keep hearing, and like just because I think Dragon Quest, it's iconic on its own. Like, the characters of Dragon Quest, even though you've never played Dragon Quest, like some of the monsters and everything like that. The slime, like,
Yeah.
there's things that stand out of it. And I'm just like, again, this is one of those series that I want to see for myself how it is, if it's something I could get into. Again, the fantasy thing is the hard thing for me.
Yeah, I get that.
Um, but it's interesting too, because they have one and two coming out next year.
Yeah, that was the surprise announcement, because
Yeah.
when I met with Square Enix, they were like, oh, like, we're hoping that this will get people into like the Erdrick trilogy and they'll be excited to play more of it. And I was just like, play more of it? Are you guys doing an HD2 remake of 1 and 2? And they're like, oh, we'll have to see. They were playing coy. And I expected like, okay, they'll announce it like next year or something.
Mhm.
And then lo and behold, they announce it on this direct.
Yeah, which is interesting. I feel like they should just release like the three of them together,
I don't know,
unless they're
because
planning to do more for 1 and 2.
I'm surprised that they're going like full on with the Dragon
Dragon
Quest, uh, like early trilogy with these HD 2D remakes, because I've seen so much demand for like Final Fantasy VI
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But like, I mean, I guess like Dragon Quest 1 and 2 are also pretty well liked. I think it's either the first or the second Dragon Quest game. Wade Rosen, who is the CEO of Atari, He's been on the show, and I believe he said Dragon Warrior, which was the name in the West for Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3. Dragon Warrior 2, I think he said, was his favorite Nintendo game of all time, or like one of his favorite Nintendo games of all time, or something like that. So like he thinks very highly of it. I know that it has a dedicated fan base for these first 3 games. So I guess it makes sense, but like I guess I just maybe they're thinking like one Final Fantasy remake at a time.
Yeah.
Like we don't need to remake like 6 and 7 at the same time.
Yeah, and I mean, would you really want to, based off of the success of 7, like, let 7 finish, first,
Yeah.
before you commit to maybe spreading 6 up into a trilogy as well.
Oh God, don't do that.
Don't do that.
It'll be 2035 by the time 6 finishes if they split it into a trilogy.
I'll be like, Brian, they actually did it.
Yeah,
We'll be old.
We're at the nursing homes together. We're playing Final Fantasy VI Remake. So Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake is coming to Switch and every other major platform on November 14th. And then Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D Remake, I believe, is 2025. So we don't have long to wait for any of these, really. Next up, we got Funko Fusion. We got a new look at that game, which showed us content from Jaws, He-Man, Back to the Future, Five Nights at Freddy's, Nope, Shaun of the Dead, and plenty of other properties. That comes to Switch and every other major platform on September 13th. Your boy Luigi stepped into the spotlight with Luigi's Mansion 2 HD. Really just a trailer reminding us this is coming out next week.
Yeah.
1 week from today, June 27th. I don't know what this next one is. The new Denpa Man. Or new Denpa Men. This seems like maybe the weirdest trailer.
It's so weird.
I don't know what to think of it. It's a bizarre free-to-play RPG where you go around, you collect Denpa Men, which I don't know what that is. And then you add them to your party and you adventure around with them as companions. You can do main quests. You can decorate your island. You can fish.
Yeah.
Limited time events. Compete against other players and their Denpa Men. What is this?
I don't know, man. All I know, it's like if Animal Crossing and Pikmin had a baby, this
Maybe a little bit
it.
of Tamagotchi Life mixed in.
Yeah, Tamagotchi Life as well. Yeah, that's what this is. And hey, if that's your thing, go at it.
Mentioning that, I just got angry that we don't have Tamagotchi Life on Switch. We have the other me-based game, but like,
yeah,
I forget which one. It was like something Quest, right? Me. Oh God, now I need to look it up.
Oh, now I was just about to do the same thing. I was like, I have to look it up.
Metopia? No. Yeah, Metopia. Okay, that was completely off. But Denpa Men, the new Denpa Men, I'm sorry, comes to Switch on July 22nd. I don't know what to think of that. It's free to play, so hopefully there's no like weird monetization on with that. Here's one that I was actually very caught off guard with, and I didn't realize this was a mobile game from like 2013 until I looked it up. Metal Slug Attack Reloaded. This is what we're talking about with it used to be it used to be a mobile game. This was the only like real shadow drop that we got during the direct outside of the title updates. I played a little bit of it last night actually, and it's very fun. It was a mobile title, and it's basically Plants vs. Zombies in Metal Slug form.
Yeah.
But instead of tower defense, it's like a tower attack game. So you have to like save your resources. You can upgrade this girl who's carrying like a supply bag, and you can upgrade her. And if you do that, you gain resources faster. So you have to like balance, like, do you want to spend your resources on units that will like defend your base and attack theirs? Or do you want to upgrade? I always go for like upgrading the resource person, because then you can like really like, so I just put out enough people that they can defend the incoming enemies. But yeah, like you have to beat the incoming enemies and destroy their base.
I mean, it's just good to see Metal Slug still kicking. You
Right?
know,
Did you play Metal Slug growing up like I did?
It was again a cousin that had the game, so I did.
I would go to arcades and play it. Oh, it was so much fun.
But I didn't know that this was a mobile game. So hey, I don't know if this would be my type of game now, though. But
fair.
I don't know. I'll see. I'm probably not going to play this one.
I think everybody thought it was going to be like Metal Slug Tactics, which we've been waiting for a long time. And it wasn't, but it was another kind of like strategy adjacent Metal Slug game, which is strange. I didn't even know this existed, because there was also, so on mobile, it was called Metal Slug Attack. And there was also Metal Slug Defend, which I'm assuming was the more defensive version.
Yeah.
But Metal Slug Attack Reloaded came out immediately after the direct. There's also a new mode called Another Story mode that gives you unique episodes and challenges to complete, which I've started playing through this. It seems like there's quite a few levels to take on. And the difficulty spike, oh my God, it ramped up so fast. Like I was like, this is really easy. Like I'm having a good time with it, but it's super easy. And then I got to this new level, like 'cause you go around the map, and I think this new level was in China. And the first level, I just got wrecked. And I'm like, okay, I have a lot to learn. I thought like, okay, I've got this down. I've played like games like this before. But yeah, I don't know if I just didn't level up my characters or if I just mismanaged like the resources or something, but I was like, okay, that's enough for tonight.
Yeah, you're like, I'm putting this down.
I'm gonna go play Elden Ring, which is a little bit easier. No, I'm just kidding. It wasn't that hard. But it's available now on Switch and all major platforms if that sounds up your alley. Quick news here: Darkest Dungeon 2, speaking of very difficult games, the news here is just that it's coming to Switch. That came out in 2023 to generally positive reviews. Game Informer gave it an 8.5 out of 10. It arrives on Switch and PlayStation on July 15th. Here's where it starts getting fun. Nintendo Switch Online plus expansion pack. They've been going kind of obscure recently. Like we did get some Mega Man games, I think 2 weeks ago, but those were the Game Boy games. Like I feel like most people's memory of Mega Man games of that era were the NES versions. The Game Boy games, sure, happy they're there.
Yeah.
Give us the NES games. These were the ones that I've been waiting for. A lot of these were. We got 2 new Game Boy Advance games, 2 new N64 games. Game Boy Advance, Metroid Zero Mission. Thank God. I've been waiting for this.
Yeah.
It's a remake of the original NES Metroid, but with Game Boy Advance graphics. Oh, it's so beautiful. It's amazing. All the quality of life improvements that were added through Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion, now in a remake of the original Metroid. It also has a fun epilogue where it's actually kind of stealth-based, which is very cool. Where your armor gets stripped of you and you have to sneak through the space pirate base without being detected. And then, I mean, I don't want to spoil too much, but then like, you get your revenge on like the hell that they unleash upon you when like you don't have your powers.
In
it's
true
so satisfying.
Samus fashion,
Yes. And then Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, Four Swords, which it's funny because was it you that I was talking to, or maybe somebody else at Summer Game Fest, where they were just like, oh my God, we need like the Wii U remasters on Switch because there's already so many Zelda games on there, and like what else are we missing? Like we're not missing that many. And I actually mentioned Four Swords is not on Switch because like we've had so many games brought over to Switch, and then also the Nintendo Switch Online catalog has so many Zelda games, so it's like almost all the mainline Zelda games are on Switch, and this was one of them that was not. So basically Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, Four Swords is full on A Link to the Past remade for Game Boy Advance, but then also a standalone Four Swords multiplayer game.
Yeah. Are we going to play this together, Brian?
Can you play online on Game Boy Advance? I know you can on N64.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you can. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, on the Game Boy Advance. Well, you had the cables, right?
Yeah, I just don't know because like the way that it works.
If you can if on the Game Boy Advance games.
The way it works on N64's online play is it just basically creates a session, and whoever you're inviting in just joins your session, right? And it's as if they're plugged in, sitting next to you, right, into like the second controller port. So I don't know if you can do that, but yeah, I'm down.
Hey man, I'd be fine. It'd be fine. I was actually really excited about this, and also now I'm just thinking like. We'll talk about it as we get to the other announcements, but yeah, it just got me thinking about other Zelda games that I want to see.
Oh, what could you be referring to? But the N64 games, strangely enough, you have to go into a separate Nintendo 64 app for this, which I thought this was only going to be like a Japan-only thing because this actually came out in Japan a few months ago or a few weeks ago maybe. Where it's Nintendo 64 and then it says like mature 17 plus. And I'm like, that sounds a lot more ominous than it actually is. Like if something is like labeled like in bold letters, like mature 17 plus, I'm like, there's something very adult happening here. But no, it's just Perfect Dark and Turok Dinosaur Hunter. It's like, I feel like if I was like a kid and I was playing Switch and my mom saw me, like if I was like 14 or 13, and there was a thing on the front of my Switch that said mature 17 plus, you'd be like, do you have on your Nintendo? Like,
yeah, it's like, what's happening? Well, it really, it really just you think of the rating system when we were younger, right? Like you're thinking of going down the aisles in Blockbuster and trying to convince your parents to let you rent a game. These would technically be those games that you would have to get that permission or be with an adult to rent, right?
but
So it's like, it's actually, it was violent for the time, and because I guess Perfect Dark has a gun, like that's why, right? Like it just shows how dated that rating system is.
yeah, well, the thing is that GoldenEye, I think the GoldenEye might not have been
Oh
rated.
yeah, it's
That
not.
No, it's rated teen. I guess Perfect Dark was rated mature.
Well, there's literally blood in GoldenEye that takes over your screen.
Let's see what. Yeah,
Is
sure
it
enough,
the
Perfect Dark
language?
was rated M for mature.
Why is Perfect Dark rated?
Let's see. It is rated M for mature. Oh wait, no, this is I'm bringing up Perfect Dark Zero, which is a game you should not play at all.
No, don't.
Uh,
Oh, the language.
Oh, because I do remember in Perfect Dark
Yeah.
Zero, she cursed quite a bit. I didn't know if that
Yeah.
was. I never played Perfect Dark because it's
Oh,
like
it's so
Majora's
good.
Mask. I didn't have the expansion pack, and you needed the
Mm,
expansion pack to do anything cool in the N64 version of Perfect Dark.
yeah.
So now it's a moot point. Now I might play this with
Yeah.
my N64 controller.
Yeah, wear your headset, and so no one could hear the swearing happening.
Yes, don't let my mom
Yeah.
hear that I'm playing a game with swearing. But yeah, those are all out now. You have to have the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack to do that, which I believe is $50 a year instead of the $20 base price. One of the very few subscriptions that I have that have not raised their prices over the last 2 years,
Which is nice.
which
Don't
is very
jinx it.
nice.
Don't jinx
Oh
it,
no.
Brian. I think you jinxed it.
Well, that could have been one of their big announcements at the Nintendo Direct. Just like, hey, by the way, you're paying more for the exact same service, no added benefits whatsoever. In fact, it might get worse. That's how every other subscription service has done it. So I'm assuming Nintendo would follow that model. But knowing
Exactly.
Nintendo's like affinity for like online stuff, they'll probably do that, but it'll be like 5 years behind everybody else because that's how every other online feature that they roll out is. And I know you work for them, so you don't have to do any trash talk of them. Uh, I love Nintendo. Um, the next announcement was a game I have no idea about. It's called Phantom Brave: The Lost Hero, and is a tactical turn-based challenge from the creators of the Disgaea series. And
Sure.
you play as a young girl who can speak with phantoms, and you and her phantom companion travel the world of Ivoire. I'm trying to pronounce that properly. And you recruit phantoms and bind them to objects and then combine them with gadgets, and then you can use them to attack the pirates that you're fighting. And
Sure.
yeah, sure. There are over 50 characters and over 300 skills in the game, and that comes to Switch next year. So, Camille, are you a fighting game fan?
Oh, I'm a. I have nostalgia for fighting games. I like dabbling in fighting games now, but I'm not a hardcore fighting game fan nowadays because
That's fair.
I'm not great at them.
So,
That's why.
what are the fighting games that you are nostalgic for?
I would okay. There's this game called oh my gosh, now I'm forgetting. Bloody Roar.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, really, really great. Dragon Ball GT.
Yes. Those old
Um,
Dragon Ball fighting games are so good.
so good.
That's why I was so happy to check out Dragon Ball Sparking Zero at Summer
Oh
Game
yes,
Fest.
same here.
I had so
Oh,
much fun with that.
it's so much fun. Did you perform a fusion?
No,
Oh, you can.
I
Reach
did
level
not.
5 and you can. Sorry. Anyways, so Dragon Ball GT, and I mean, you have the classics, Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, and this next announcement was pretty big.
Yes.
Was pretty
So
big.
I have this as an arcade one-up cabinet. We were talking about this
Yeah.
before we started hitting record. We talked for like 20 minutes before, which
I
in
know.
in
Which is
hindsight was a bad
crazy.
idea because this is a very long episode and I'm already taking up so much of your
I'm
time.
so
But
sorry.
no, I'm more concerned about your time than my time. Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection Arcade Classics.
This is
So
crazy.
7 classic games are the arcade versions. They even tell you if you go on their website the ROM versions that they're using. So if you're like really in the weeds, you can go in there. So X-Men Children of the Atom, Marvel Superheroes, X-Men versus Street Fighter, Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter, Marvel versus Capcom, Marvel versus Capcom 2, and then a bonus game, the side-scrolling beat-em-up game, The Punisher. They all have rollback netcode. There's the museum mode. There's jukebox, which of course, because you have to listen to that song. You know the one.
Yep.
You know the song.
I will tell you. That was my rendition.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect.
it was
We're keeping
obviously. It's not. It's so comparable to the original.
I'm actually worried I'm going to get copyright.
I know.
claimed.
I was like, did I just ruin? That's what I was trying. I was gonna actually say it, and then I was like, oh, I'll just hum. Maybe I won't.
No, it's all good. I'm not even monetized, so it's all good. We're still building up the YouTube presence. The YouTube presence is very, very new. So, by the way, if you're listening to this and you're not subscribed to the YouTube, go seek it out. Just search All Things Nintendo, and it's youtube.com, and then the username is @BrianP.Shea. So yeah, trying to get to that 500 sub mark.
Exactly, and then you can also see the little glimpse of the arcade cabinet we were talking about.
Well, you can see the NBA Jam arcade cabinet.
But then across from it, you could kind of, isn't that the...
No, that's the NFL Blitz arcade cabinet. But that's actually out of frame for the people watching this because the thing is cropped. So
oh no, yeah. But I mean, this announcement was insane because Marvel vs. Capcom 2.
Yes.
Like, as soon as I saw this announcement, all I kept hearing in my head is Tornado Claw, Tornado Claw.
Oh like, yes.
Because I would spam that.
Berserker Barrage.
Berserker Barrage. And like it was such a well done game, and like it's so great. Like, because when I started off in esports, it was actually with the FGC, so the fighting game community.
Mm-hmm.
They still love Marvel vs. Capcom to compete in, like, for the esports side. So like the fact that they're so specific on like what ROM version, you know, having that net code is integral to the fighting game community. It's like, this is a really big announcement. And then you know, the museum, I remember spending hours just flicking through the museum and like, man, this is so cool. And because I would love to draw things, I would actually put a paper up on my TV screen and like trace out.
You did that too.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I did that with all like the turtles. Like I had like, and I did it with X-Men too, because I had those on like VHS. I would buy like, people who are listening to this who didn't live through like the VHS era, like they would sell, like, you know, you can go to any store right now, or you can just turn on your whatever device you have and just watch full seasons of TV shows. Back in the day, it was like you would go and you'd buy a VHS tape and it would just be like 3 random episodes. It wasn't even like a cohesive arc. So there's like 3 episodes of the Turtles cartoon and 3 episodes of the X-Men animated series that are just burned into my brain. And I would do that where I would pause the tape, and through like the scan lines, I would put up a piece of paper and trace like Rogue or Cyclops or whoever was on the screen. So I would do that too. Same thing for Sonic. They would like the Sonic cartoons. I had those on VHS as well. Yeah.
And you know, like that was actually, I think it was that era, or even like going into the Dreamcast era, like where a museum mode, or like the gallery mode, or where you're listening to the different soundtracks, like that was a real thing. Like, you know, that was integral to games. Power Stone's another great fighting game, by the way.
I've talked to Capcom several times and been like, hey, please bring back Power Stone. Like I've talked to the Street Fighter 6 developers and I've mentioned Power Stone. I've interviewed them. I mean, I went to their offices in Osaka for our cover story. So I interviewed them like 5 times there, but it's in the time since I've interviewed them a few more times. And 2 of those times I've mentioned Power Stone, especially at Summer Game Fest. I asked them like, hey, you know, we're getting crossover characters in Street Fighter 6 now. Could we get some Power Stone characters?
Yeah, that'd be insane. Oh my gosh, that would be insane. Keep putting up the good fight, Brian.
I'm doing what I can. I mean, shout out to Power Stone. Please just give us the collection. Like put Power Stone 1 and 2 on Switch. Oh my God, that would be the new hotness.
That'd be so good.
If you go to like the JW Marriott, maybe we're not talking Zelda. Maybe we're playing Power Stone on the Joy-Cons.
We're putting money behind our games.
we're basically just the stereotype of those people at the Switch reveal where they brought like their Switch to the rooftop party and they're playing like Mario Kart.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll become those people. But yeah, no, I think this is such a huge win, and maybe people who are not into fighting games don't realize how big of a win this is.
Hmm.
But this is just insane that they're doing this.
And the last time Marvel vs. Capcom 2 in particular was ported was Xbox 360,
Yeah.
and it was delisted pretty quickly after it came out. So like unless, and it's not backwards compatible, so you have to actually dust off your Xbox 360 if you want to play that version. You have to have already bought it back, like, 15 years ago, or
Yeah.
whenever, like when it had that short window of availability. So I believe there's a physical version as well if you want to make sure they can't take it away from you. um, but they did say that the Fighting Collection is a series now, and we've had a few series or a few collections. There was the Street Fighter 30th anniversary collection that's on Switch. We've had the I forget what the exact name of it is. It was like Fighting Classic Collection, and it was like Darkstalkers and a bunch of
Oh
other
yeah, yeah,
games
yeah, yeah. Oh,
that came out like three
Darkstalkers,
years
yeah.
ago or something. And the fact that they're calling this a series now, I'm hoping that means they're going to dig into the well and start giving us things like Power Stone. Like give us a Power
Mhm.
Stone fighting collection or something. I would be over the moon if they did that. I'm hoping that this is like the first of many, because there's so many great games that are just not available on modern platforms. And Marvel vs. Capcom, up until this announcement, was one of them, or Marvel vs. Capcom 2 in particular. And Power Stone would definitely be one of them. But anyway, this is coming to Switch, PlayStation, and PC. Very obviously not Xbox for some reason, which has caused a lot of controversy online later this year. So very much looking forward to that. Unless there's a problem with the Switch version, I am 100% getting this for Switch.
Yeah.
Imagine, I mean, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 on the go. Oh my God.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's
So
crazy.
excited.
Yeah.
I'm going to, yeah, that's what I
You're
mean.
you're definitely gonna have to play with the Pro controller for
I mean,
for
maybe I played the Street Fighter anniversary collection on the Joy Cons when I'm on a plane.
and how'd you find that? You
I mean,
liked
it's
it?
not the best, but
Ah,
like I also don't
it's
like the
doable.
D-pad of the Pro controller. I think the D-pad of like the Power A controllers, which are also officially licensed, but they're not made by Nintendo,
Mhm.
are so much more conducive for fighting games, and also Tetris 99. Like if you're playing Tetris
Yeah.
99, the regular Pro controller, the D-pad's a little bit too mushy and like not precise.
Yeah.
You got to get the Power A D-pad, which is a little bit more stiff. So because I was like trying to like move the Tetronimo around, and I would accidentally hit down. I'd be like, no,
Yeah,
no, no, no,
it's
no,
like
not
yeah,
there.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I revert to Joy-Cons when I'm playing Tetris 99.
See, you and I are on the same wavelength here. Let's see if we're on the same wavelength of this one, because it's a very divisive, popular series by Nintendo, Super Mario Party Jamboree. What's your viewpoint on the Mario Party franchise?
I love Super Mario Party. Like I love Mario Party
Thank
games.
you.
They're so good. I think the people that are salty about them just don't like the in or like how you have extra stars given to you
Hmm.
or to given to different players at the end, so it eliminates that the competitiveness.
Yeah.
So like I think that's people's gripes, but it's like get good,
And it's
get
also
good
like,
and don't complain.
if you're concerned about the competitive integrity of video gaming, good. That's fine. That's great. I think that like esports, I think that like
Yeah,
games that are meant to be competitive, like if you're jumping on and you're playing Call of Duty and you want to make sure that everybody's kind of on a level playing field within reason, great. Mario Party, I
it's
don't
not one
care.
of those games. It is not, exactly. It's not one of those games. It's like just enjoy yourself. It's a great game when you get like have a party or have friends over for the holidays and stuff like that. It's just so much fun because it ties in like the craziness of WarioWare games
Hmm.
that it's just like it's just so good. And we'll talk about this one in particular, what's exciting me about it, but
Yeah, so this is the follow-up to Super Mario Party, which came out in 2018, which I've said this a few times. I think it's the worst of the Mario Party games on Switch. Mario Party Superstars being the better one, which
yeah.
that was just a greatest hits game. So, I mean, you can't really count that, I guess.
I guess not.
But, I mean, Sonic Generations, I think, is one of the better Sonic games of that era, and that's a greatest hits game. So, I mean, it's basically the exact same scenario of like, hey, we're remaking all these old games, but like one level at a time. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what Mario Party Superstars. So I'm counting it. Uh, so this Super Mario Party Jamboree has 5 new game boards plus 2 returning boards, over 110 mini games, which is the largest ever in a Mario Party game. And you can play up to 20 players online in a mode called Koopathon. So what are you excited about for this one?
That right there.
Koopathon.
20 Koopathon. 20 players, with an online mode. I know it's not it's not exactly the Mario Party experience, but I do want to see how I fare against the world's best. That's where my
Oh, so now
competitive
you care about competitive integrity.
well, I don't know about the integrity part because luck is always a part of it, right? Luck is always a part of it. But I would be trying my darnest to be the best
Fair enough. I mean,
that's out there on this resort.
I'm intrigued by this as well. Like, I don't know exactly what Koopathon mode is. I'm assuming we're gonna learn a lot more in like the coming months. Usually, Nintendo will start ramping up like the information aspect of it, like 2 months
Mhm.
out or so.
Yeah.
So probably in August we'll start learning like the real like nitty gritty details of what Super Mario Party Jamboree is. But it comes out October 17th, so the holiday release calendar is starting to load up at this point. And then we get to the next thing, and we're going to stop messing around here, Camille, because this is the game that you and I think are most excited to talk about. The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. And the way it happened for me, we talked about this a little bit already, but we see Link venturing through what looks like a dungeon of some sort. He comes up on Ganon, and he's wearing like a hood and everything. It looks almost like the Breath of the Wild hood.
Yes.
And he removes that, and it's Link's Awakening Link, from the remake. So it's like
Yeah.
that toy style. And I'm like, okay. And then I was like, wait a sec. In Link Between Worlds, Ravio
Yep.
had a hood, but he had like more of like the rabbit style, right?
Yeah,
Or
and it's like darker, like the darker purple or like blue hood, right?
so
Like it was
I was originally
yeah.
like, oh, is this like a Link Between Worlds remake? In like the Link's Awakening remake art style. And
Yeah.
I was like, okay, cool, this is awesome. And like it looked like some of like the scenes, like that looked like the Ganon from a
Yeah.
Link Between Worlds.
Well, it was like the Ganon when I saw firstly just crazy reveal by the way because like when you just see a little chibi Link running and like the
Hmm.
shield, like they hid the shield at first so you didn't know quite what you were seeing, and then you see the shield and you're like, oh my gosh, this is the Hyrulean shield. I'm having goosebumps just going through this right now. But and then like when he took off the hood, I was like, oh, I wonder if they're doing like a Link to the Past. That's what
Oh,
first went through my mind. I'm like, is this a Link to the Past? Right?
it's
Like,
funny that we both went to like a game in that series because Link Between
yes.
Worlds is a direct sequel to A Link to the Past.
Yeah.
And we could not have been more wrong because
No.
Link sinks into like this chasm that is like some sort
Defeats
of like
Ganon, by the way.
defeats
Defeats
Ganon.
Ganon.
Link sinks into a chasm, which, by the way, as somebody who has studied the timeline, God, that's the nerdiest thing I've ever said. As somebody who's studied the Zelda timeline, I've done an episode recounting the entire timeline in the lead up to Tears of the Kingdom. I don't know where that fits in then.
No.
Because like he's fought Ganon a handful of times, and they all have significance in the timeline. So where does this fit into the timeline? That's one of my main questions. The speculation that I did was, could this be in the A Link to the Past era? Because from what I understand, I'm trying to recall properly because there's so many details, so many different links in
Yeah.
Zeldas. A Link to the Past happens, and then from what I understand, that might be the same Link that goes off into Link's Awakening, and he goes off on an adventure, gets sucked into the dream world
Yep.
and Koholint Island. And then after that, he comes back. I'm wondering if this is a sequel
It's
to A Link's Awakening, him coming back to Hyrule. Ganon is maybe reborn, and he has to fight Ganon, and then he sinks in. Because if you look, I've seen pictures that people have brought up. This looks like the layout of the Link to the Past Hyrule. In that scene where Zelda is staring over the cliffside,
it does look like, yeah, a Link to the
somebody
Past.
has matched up the map
Yeah.
with that vista that she's looking over, and it lines up 1-to-1 with the Link to the Past map layout.
Yes. And I think it is, but I wonder if they're doing like a branch timeline.
Yeah, well, that's the
So
other thing
it's
that people have pointed out is there are both versions of Zora's.
exactly.
We have this is the Zapruder film of like people are going hard into like, all right, how does this work? How does this work? But we haven't even gotten to the main hook of this. It is an all new 2D Zelda game in the art style of Link's Awakening remake, But you don't play as Link because Link got yeeted out by Ganon.
Got yeeted out.
This is Zelda. You were playing as Zelda. It's actually the Legend of Zelda. I saw somebody make a joke that it should have been called the Legend of Link, which would have been very funny. And Zelda has the Tri-Rod, and she can create echoes, which are basically like clones of things. So like the first example they give is she like clones like a coffee table, and then she can stack those up like stairs and like reach higher up areas. And it looks like she has a jump button, which is interesting. And and like you can clone enemies and have them fight for you.
Yeah, and before I get into that ability, that's why I think it's a branch timeline, because then you couldn't go into Link to the Past. Like, I think this may be a timeline where instead of Link being the savior or continuing, you have Zelda. Like, I feel like it is a branch timeline from A Link to the Past. Like, because after Link's Awakening, it goes into Link Between Worlds.
Don't give me another timeline. We have 3 branch timelines already.
I know. But anyway, I think they may do that. And but I'm kind of hopeful if they do that, because that means that they may be open to doing more games with Zelda as the protagonist.
So here's the thing. That might have been the end of A Link to the Past that we were seeing, that scene where he was charged, because Princess Zelda was held in a crystal.
That's true. And that is the end of, yeah.
So, I mean, I was just looking it up to make sure I was right. And I was. And like, it could very well be the end of it. God, it might be a branch timeline.
It has to be, because like they got that. And that's why I thought it was A Link to the Past. But then again, Link's hair wasn't pink, right? And like I could also see them like just going with the blonde route just for consistency of the character. But yeah, anyways, back to Zelda being playable, because that was wild, because the reveal also channeled a little bit of Breath of the Wild in it, where she's running to this cliffside, and then you see that world that you said is kind of someone marked one for one as the Hyrule in A Link to the Past, right? So it was really cool that like they did a nod to like, this is a fresh start, like this is another storytelling that we're going on a brand new adventure with Zelda as our heroine. And the Echoes of Wisdom thing, I think, I've seen people kind of giving flack with like, oh well, Zelda doesn't have like a sword, that's not cool. But I do like the idea of like she's using the Triforce of like her being the representation of the Triforce of Wisdom, taking a new approach to fighting off these monsters and trying to maneuver these puzzles throughout Hyrule. And I think there was even like in the trailer, you saw a copy of Impa, it looked like.
Oh, really? I must have missed that.
At first I thought it was like a copy of Sheik, but it's obviously couldn't be because Zelda's there. So it looked like it was actually the Impa version.
So I've got it. Yeah. I've got it now.
Oh, here we go. You're like, I got the timeline.
So it's right at the end of A Link to the Past. Something happens when Ganon is defeated, and it breaks reality, right? Because like you're shattering the crystals, freeing the sages, and something happens with reality where Link gets sucked into like this rift, which we saw in the trailer, and it kind of creates, it's almost a bad word at this point, but multiverse.
Oh.
Which is why we have all these characters. Link was rocking like the Breath of the Wild hood. It's from all these different timeline things. We saw both versions of Zora. I think that was their hint of like, hey, wink, wink. This is not like a single timeline thing. This is like things from across the entire Zelda. Zelda literally is a multiverse. Like that's what the branching timelines are. It's a multiverse that exists within the Zelda timeline. So I'm thinking that this pulls from all of those and gives us what we saw. But I think that's what it probably is.
Yeah, they have like that, the Korok, well, the Hesu looking character as well, right? So they have that. So you actually may be onto something where like this portal is like kind of sucking up things from multiple worlds, or like throwing things in two different universes. That's really cool. And that would also explain the Impa, because the Impa there, there was no Impa in A Link to the Past. Like, well, universe.
Well, was there? I feel like there was an
Yeah, I'm actually there
older
was like,
version.
but was it Impa or was it just?
Let's see.
Let me see.
Impa appears. Nope. Ocarina of Time. Let me see. No, wait. A Link. No, Impa did not, but Impa did show up in A Link Between Worlds. It looks like.
Oh my gosh! What if this is a lead up to A Link to be Between Worlds as well? Like if that theory.
I'm on the Zelda wiki or Zelda fandom wiki. In A Link Between Worlds, a violet-haired, aged Impa is once again Zelda's nursemaid and one of the descendants of the Seven Sages. So.
Oh yes, that is right. That is true.
It's been a long time since I played. I mean,
time.
2013, I think, was when I played A Link Between Worlds when it first came out. But I'm very excited for Echoes of Wisdom. It is one of those where I was just like, oh, that's something I didn't know that I wanted. Like, I knew I wanted a playable Zelda, but I was kind of hoping she would be playable in Tears of the Kingdom.
Okay. See, like, I know a lot of people went that route, but like, I was really set with like Link being the only protagonist that you go through that world with, just because it's like, I don't know, I just tie that story so close to Link. I wasn't expecting them to bring back this art style from Link's Awakening, but also the hints of like multiple possibilities of how like users could go or gamers could go through this, like as in Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, right? And that's what's really exciting to me, because we even heard Aonuma-san say like he doesn't even know how many echoes there are in this world, right? So I'm curious, and I love the puzzles of the Legend of Zelda games. I think a lot of fans do if they're a fan of the franchise. But so I'm excited for like that aspect of like really thinking of like, oh wait, how do I like have to go through this part of the game? Like, what can I use?
Yeah, and so the reason I was Googling something is I was trying to find, we did ask Eiji Aonuma about Link's pink hair. Or no, it was Takashi Tezuka, who was the director.
Okay, yeah.
We asked why Link had pink hair, and it was just like, oh, that was an accident, pretty much. But with, I think we even asked him, and he was just like, did he have pink hair? And then like we showed him a picture. He's like, oh yeah, he did have pink hair.
That's a mistake. My bad.
But like, yeah, like I did ask Eiji Aonuma about like Tears of the Kingdom, like, oh, people are like kind of breaking this game. Like they're completing tasks like the ways that like you probably didn't anticipate them to, or the way you designed this puzzle to be completed. How does that make you feel when you see that? And he was just like, oh, I love it, because like when you figure out a way that you can kind of like quote unquote cheat in a game, like it's fun. Like it's fun if you can like think you outsmarted the developers. So when I see that, I'm like, oh, that's good. The people are probably having fun. So he actually enjoys when people do that. So, I mean, I'm sure this is going to be another one of those. So it seems like he is intentionally giving people ways to almost break these puzzles.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like another result of Breath of the Wild, right? Is how far can gamers go, like with how they approach the game? And I think, when you look at the response that you've had from the developers, like Aonuma-san, it's like embracing that. And I feel like there's like a corner pocket of fans that kind of wanted like a Mario Maker-esque version of the Legend of Zelda game, right? The Legend of Zelda game. So I don't know if I don't know if I'm ready for that, right? Because I do tie my experience to like the story so much, right? Even though I do like Hyrule Warriors, but that's like completely.
It's another
different.
multiversal game.
Yes,
same thing with Age of Calamity. Like that is like a multiverse thing too. Like the Zelda series is multiverse before multiverse was cool.
Exactly, right? So it's great that they're tying this in and like kind of pay homage again for that opening of the reveal of like, oh yeah, we're bringing in elements of Breath of the Wild that like those fans are going to like about this. But what I was saying earlier in this episode, it's like when we were going over Four Swords, I'm like, I kind of want all of the handheld games for the Legend of Zelda series to come out in this style, because it is so adorable and so cute. Like, I could imagine a Phantom Hourglass or Spirit Tracks in this style.
Well, the thing about Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks is it's the same link as Wind Waker, or at least Phantom Hourglasses. I think Spirit
Yes.
Tracks might be a different link. Phantom Hourglass. So typically, when they have the same link, they keep the same art
Same art
style.
style, yeah.
So that's why another reason that I think this is the link from Link's Awakening / A Link to the Past, because it's the same art style as the Link's Awakening remake.
That's true.
Um, I could see the Oracle games being remade in this
Mm.
style. I don't know if I would want Minish Cap in this style, because Minish Cap has such a beautiful art style already.
Mhm.
Whereas the Oracle games they veered close to Link's Awakening just out of necessity, because they were for Game Boy Color. They weren't for like the more powerful graphical powerhouse of the Game Boy Advance. Whereas like, Game Boy Advance could really show off some beautiful like sprite art,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
But
I'm excited how far they go down this tunnel. Like, again, we talked about like another one, because this is technically a link between worlds, is this link. I don't want to see that art style for A Link Between Worlds, because A Link Between Worlds had a very specific art style.
people hated
Um
it at first.
I loved it. It was like just so different, right? And I'm one that definitely embraces like new concepts. And again, I think that's why no one saw this on the list. Like, they heard rumors of a Zelda game, but never would think of something like this. And the fact that we're getting it so soon too, like September is just a few months away.
Yeah, September 26th.
I mean, I was crossing my fingers for an Ocarina of Time game, but a remaster. But I could wait. I could wait.
One day we'll get it. I mean, thankfully it is on Nintendo Switch Online.
Yes.
The funny thing about that, I was mentioning earlier in the episode about how like the best remakes and remasters fill in the blanks that like your brain was filling in back in the day, and like makes it seem like the game that you remember. That's what Ocarina of Time 3D does.
Yeah.
It's like I kind of went back and like I played that right before I joined Game Informer, so back in like late 2014, and I was like, oh my god, this isn't what it looked like all the time. Like, this isn't what
Yeah,
the N64 version.
exactly.
And then I went back and played the N64 version. I'm like, oh my god, what is this monstrosity?
Yeah. Why is it so blurry?
I know, exactly. So very excited about the Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. I'm intrigued by the gameplay. It's going to be interesting to see how like Zelda battles play out when like you are not directly interfacing with the enemies like via a sword and shield.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to give it a shot. Like, I mean, there are few developers that I trust as wholeheartedly as I do Nintendo, particularly the Zelda development team and the Mario development teams, right? So I'm all in.
Yeah, I'm all in as well. Especially, I just, I'm all in. I just want to see how it controls, because if there are so many echoes, are we scrolling like in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom? Like, right? I'm curious about that. And I like, are there other abilities in terms of echoes like that they're not showing us yet? Like, would you be able to combine
Gotta be.
echoes a bit? Like,
Oh, maybe
kind
that's
of
a
like,
power you unlock later.
yeah, like I wonder how far they're willing to go into, this is really customizable experience for how you're going to go
Wow.
about this game. But
I didn't even think about that. I'm sure that there's maybe, who knows? Like, and then they have to worry about all the interactions that they could have, like kind of like Ultra Hand style.
yeah.
Like, it almost looks like 2D Ultra Hand. So
Mhm.
that seems cool to me. But in addition to the game announcement, we also learned about a gold-colored Nintendo Switch Lite Hyrule edition, which has the Hylian crest. That also comes out on September 26th and includes a 12-month individual subscription for Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack. Next up was a significant drop down in terms of like surprise factor. It was Just Dance 2025 edition, and it was basically just a new trailer for the next edition of the still surprisingly popular game. This version has 40 new songs spanning several genres, comes to Switch and other platforms in October. Lego Horizon Adventures, talked about this last week because that was the big announcement, but this appearance seemed to just be Nintendo promoting the same kind of stuff that PlayStation promoted during the Summer Game Fest stream, but on its Nintendo Direct. still a huge shock that a PlayStation Studios game is coming to Switch on day one, especially.
Yeah, it's the first. It's apparently so. I got to play this game at Summer Game Fest. This is the first game from PlayStation Studios that is going to the Switch, which is insane.
Yeah,
New era.
it really is. And this
Console
is
wars are over.
shortly, tell that to the communities. This is shortly after Herman Hulst, the head of PlayStation Studios, said like, oh, well, our main single player like AAA experiences are going to still be exclusive to PlayStation. It's the live service games that are going to be day and date on Steam as well. And then like a few weeks later, we get this, which I mean, I guess you can't really, I don't know if you can consider this a AAA experience, but like it's one of their
It's
main
their
franchises.
exactly, their main franchises and how big Lego is. Like that is AAA to me in my mind.
Yeah, it is
like,
a spin-off title though. Like it's definitely not like this is the next Horizon game.
Yes, but it is like Lego games are huge, you know that, right? And like the fact that this is like probably the first Lego movie inspired Lego game.
Oh,
Right? Like
I mean, we had the Lego Star Wars Skywalker
yeah,
Saga remakes, but I don't know how much that was inspired
that's
by.
more like the old Lego
Yeah,
game style. Like this is I believe the first
it's been a
Lego
while.
Lego movie, because it's like like how Aloy is animated throughout the game is very much Lego movie. It's not like the Lego games, right? So it's very different.
Well, it's because this isn't developed by the Lego game studio.
Exactly.
This is
Yeah.
developed in part by Guerrilla Games, which
Mhm.
is the studio that makes Horizon. And then, God, what was the other studio? I just talked
Um.
about them last week.
Bu- bu-
It's a kind of
bu-
a strange name, and they're a support studio by design.
Yeah.
It is. Oh God, why can't it just tell me?
Why can't it just tell you?
I'm gonna go on the Steam page. Studio Gobo.
There we go.
I believe they worked as a support studio on Hogwarts Legacy as well.
Yeah.
So worked on some good games, but that comes to Switch, PlayStation, and PC this holiday season. Got another one of those. This is coming to Switch announcements, and it's Stray, the game where you play as a lost cat in a cyberpunk dystopia. It was one of those things where we were kind of just like, we made a joke on our Slack channel of like, congratulations, Switch players, you get to play the worst looking version of this game. But yeah, it's been out on PlayStation.
Yeah, it's been out for a while. Other places, I didn't even know this wasn't available on the Switch already.
It seems like it should have been. I mean, Little Kitty Big City was on Switch. Still the most delightful game name to say. So that's coming to Switch this holiday season. Are you a Lord of the Rings fan? No, fantasy.
But I do like Lord of the Rings movies.
Okay, so Tales of the Shire, a Lord of the Rings game. Any interest in this?
No, but I thought it was cool for like players that would want to play like this type of game, you know?
It's getting some buzz, and you create your own hobbit life, it says. And you basically grow a garden, you can go fishing, forage ingredients, cook meals, customize your character. It kind of looks similar again to Animal Crossing, but people are super hyped on this one. I'm not the biggest Lord of the Rings fan. I've seen all the movies. I've not read any of the books. I've played the Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor games.
Yeah.
Those games absolutely rule. This is coming to Switch and other platforms this holiday season. New compilation for Ace Attorney Investigations. Comes with Ace Attorney Investigations Miles Edgeworth, and then Ace Attorney Investigations 2 Prosecutor's Gambit, which has never come to the West before. Both come with HD visuals, new languages, updated character models, and new artwork. That arrives on Switch and every other major platform on September 6th. Any interest in that? Are you a Ace Attorney fan?
Never gone to Ace Attorney, but I do appreciate like the references. I've been saying objection for like a long time, and I think it's just growing up as a Nintendo kid. That's just in my mind now forever.
In talking to Game Informer's Charles Hart, he is our resident Ace Attorney fanboy. We learned that there's actually been like very well established fan translations of that one that never came to the West.
Oh,
And apparently a lot of the diehard fans who have played that are going to have to adjust because like a lot of the names are different. Like the official names are not the ones that are used in the fan translation because they never had official names for these characters. They would just make up the character names, and it would be like something completely different from like what the official name is now that it's actually coming to the West, because they're all localized to have
Yeah,
like fun
exactly.
little puns on like the names and everything. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the hardcore fans who have the most hardcore fans may have already played this game in a fan translation. So when they actually come to play the official version, they might be like, that's not that character's
Yeah, you're
name.
like, wait a second. But I
Uh,
mean, hey, that's another reason to play this if you're a hardcore fan.
exactly. You can learn like the actual names, but it sounds like some of the puns that they did in the names are not as creative as the fan translation, which is unfortunate. We are coming up on the end of the Nintendo Direct. So we've got the 100 line Last Defense Academy. I don't know much about this game, but it's a new game from the Danganronpa developers. And you need to protect your school from a mysterious force known as the School Invaders for 100 days. And you can recruit 15 companions who have backstories and lives they need to reclaim from these invaders. And it plays out with strategic RPG battles. Arrives on Switch and PC next year. We have the Romancing Saga 2, Revenge of the Seven, which I've been watching The Boys. So Revenge of the Seven,
You're just like, wait a
it's
second.
a very different type of The
Yeah.
Seven. So it's a remake of Romancing Saga 2, features English voiceovers, original and rearranged compositions, and more. And the developer promises this will be the definitive version of the game, which I would hope so. It's the newest version. It's like when Call of Duty, every single time they're like, this is the most advanced Call of Duty yet. It's like, yeah, I would
It's
hope
the same
so.
thing, yeah, and it's
It's
exactly the same thing. Yeah.
so that comes to Switch and PS5 and PC on October 24th. If you would have asked me going into this direct, Brian, there's going to be a Zelda game revealed. Is that going to be the final announcement? Is that going to be the one last thing?
Yeah.
I would have said, oh, unequivocally. Like, coming off of the year where Tears of the Kingdom was like one of the most talked about games, a Zelda game is always a major occasion. Unless it's like the remasters like of Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, that has to be the one last thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't. We got
I
a one last
know.
thing, and I was like, okay, it's got to be Mario Odyssey 2. It's got to be. I was predicting that we would see Metroid Prime 4 on this well before anybody else was kind of like on board with it. Like I've talked about with
Yeah.
other guests, and they were like, oh, we're not seeing that game this year. That's going to be a Switch 2 game. Lo and behold, the one last thing for this Nintendo Direct, Metroid Prime 4, and it has a new name, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond.
Yeah. I was with you though. I was one of those people that I'm like, now that we know that there's a successor or this other console that's going to be a part of that Switch family, I feel like they will actually announce or give us a little update on, the title of the game or show us more just because it's been so long. And, Nintendo does set expectations really well.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we would have heard that we would have to wait a little longer if we weren't going to get this announcement.
Yeah, I think they would have probably given us some sort of indicator that like,
Yeah.
hey, like
In a previous direct or something like that, or like something showing that we would have to wait, like if it was going to move to that other console. And I just feel like because that other console, like they're still like the Switch 2 or whatever it may be called, it's technically, maybe a year or so away. And they still have games coming out for the Switch. It only makes
mm-hmm.
sense, like Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, although we don't know the details of where that would be coming out. If it was coming on Switch 2, we would also see it on the Switch because like they already made that promise. We
I mean,
were
it's like with
getting,
Breath of
yeah.
the Wild, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like
And
I think it's gonna be a Crossman.
Skyward Sword as well. Like they do this quite often, right? And we see that they're not afraid to release one of the most anticipated games or give us news before we even get news of Switch 2.
It's wild. This game was announced in 2017, and the very next news that we heard was, oh, we're restarting development because we weren't like satisfied with the direction that I think it was it Team Ninja or was it Bandai Namco?
I think it was
Or was it Cyber?
Team.
We're Googling a lot of things on
I
this
know we
episode.
are. I mean, there was a lot to cover.
It was originally Bandai Namco.
Okay, Bandai.
And then they apparently were not satisfied with that, so they announced it was going under Retro Studios, which, by the way, Donkey Kong Country Returns,
Yes.
originally developed by Retro Studios. So, yeah, so this is
It made
like
sense, but see how they updated us before? It's like, obviously, they would have like, this is, to me, the direct that would be before we find out what that next console is. So it only
mhm.
made sense to be here, and holy crap, was this, like, a crazy reveal for this.
It looked so good. Like, it looked good enough that I was like, "We're seeing Switch 2 footage, we just don't know it yet," because it
Yeah.
looked so gorgeous. It looks
I think
exactly.
they yeah, I think they did confirm it is Switch, right?
Yes, they did say they didn't on the
Yeah.
direct. They did in the press release and the YouTube description that it's coming to Switch in 2025, which got all of our, especially my coworker Kyle Hilliard, had his tinfoil hat out. He's like, but I also did the same thing for Princess Peach Showtime, because for the direct on that, they did not say coming to Switch. They just said coming in 2024. And I
Yeah,
was like, you didn't say Switch. And then
yeah.
sure enough, it did come to Switch. But it looks exactly like what I would want from a new Metroid Prime game. You see battles against space pirates, scanning the environments. There's a sequence where she changes into a morph ball to get through narrow passageways.
Yeah.
And then at the end, the kind of like like an elite looking enemy coming in with like just Metroids just floating behind it. Like,
Yeah.
what is that?
Well, I think they're setting up a little bit of the story that may be there. I
Hmm.
think that may be either the main and probably the main antagonist
Probably.
for Beyond, but it was more like the end where they revealed 2025. Oh my god, I'm getting chills just saying that. Where they revealed 2025, and you're seeing this vast world. So
Hmm.
I'm curious how the exploration, like, just, and I love Metroid Prime as well, but it's
Hmm.
definitely, you go back, it's very linear. I wonder if they're going to give us a little bit more freedom as we go
Oh
to
man.
Metroid Prime 4, like, beyond. Like, that's going to be insane if they do.
Your your response to both of these like big announcements that we've just recently covered are like, I think there's more to it than they're showing us, which is like, the Zelda like with the echoes, and then Metroid Prime, like I think it's going to be more open. So I mean, I hope so. I would love that. Like that would be so sick if it was like true Metroidvania where it's like, yeah, there's an obvious place you're
Yeah.
supposed to go, but at the same time, like you could just not if you want
Yeah.
to and like
Yeah.
go explore and do side stuff.
Well, and that's the thing, like, Nintendo and these directs are so good at dropping little hints, like, in trailers for fans, like, little references that you don't think much of until, like, you see the game again, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, they teased this," you know? And I feel like this is probably a moment, like, because just how the trailer, like, the second part of the trailer ended, I was like, they really didn't have to put that footage in there. Right? Like, they
No.
didn't have to. And it looks so different than what we saw in the first half of the trailer with Samus going around like this spaceship essentially, right? Like, so it's just very interesting. Like, I feel like there may be more to the worlds that we're going to explore with Samus.
I hope so. I mean, the Metroid Prime 4 has been in development for so long. I'm so ready to see what this game is all about, what the wait is for. It's interesting though because like it just feels like a long time. I don't think it actually has been in development longer than other games. It's just that they had to restart development.
Yeah.
So the game was already announced before actual development of the game we're going to see was
Mhm.
started. So yeah, it was delayed by a lot because they changed completely the company making the game, but like, yeah, I mean, I'm ready to finally jump into this world. Like, Metroid Prime Remastered was so good,
Mhm.
and I wish they would do 2 and 3 before this came out, but it doesn't sound like they're going to unless they just shadow drop it. Maybe they do a direct at the tail end of this year, and they're like, oh, by the way, 2 and 3 are out now.
Well,
Um,
I could see them whenever Switch 2 launches, launching like a collection of
oh,
Metroid
maybe.
Prime, like, because I think there is an audience there that didn't give Metroid Prime the time it deserves.
Hmm.
So they want to reintroduce. I think it makes complete sense to have that available. If it is through, well, they can't unless this new console does like, we eShop kind of, or like we online or something like that, right? Like, but yeah, I think that would make the most sense. And the
Hmm.
fact that Nintendo did announce this before development started, I think that also shows their recent directs and like how it's very focused on upcoming games releases. Like, I think we are in this era of game announcements, Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox, where it's like not sharing too far ahead.
Yeah, they
Um,
learned their lessons.
Exactly, which gets me really excited. I know that has fans wondering sometimes what's happening with things, but the fact that we are seeing this gameplay footage, um, man, I just can't wait to see more. And I wouldn't be surprised if like there is like an up-res version for the Switch 2 console too when that comes out.
I mean, it has to. I feel like it has to. I feel like Switch 2 is actually going to play all the Switch games at
Same here.
better resolution anyway, like, or maybe even just like better frame rate, better performance, better load times. I mean, NVMe SSDs are a lot more affordable now, and those are much better, much more conducive for handheld devices than
Yeah.
like the old school SSDs. I can't believe I'm calling SSDs old school, but they are. They're like technology moves fast.
Yeah, and the fact that like we got in this direct another Nintendo Switch Lite that
Hmm.
looks absolutely beautiful.
It does.
And Nintendo's been very open in saying like they're like the new console will work like is a part of the family. It's not like to succeed the Switch, right? Makes me just feel like maybe this is the console that is going to put more ability to go harder on some graphics that more hardcore gamers want to see from Nintendo. And that
Mm.
would be absolutely insane. Oh my gosh. That's a whole nother conversation. We're not getting into that.
So Metroid Prime 4 Beyond coming to Switch 2025. Let's get into kind of the wrap up portion of this discussion. Personal feelings aside, you can just be quick with this one. What was the biggest announcement of this direct? Like trying to be objective as possible. Was it
Oh,
Mario and
okay.
Luigi? Was it Mario Party? Was it Metroid Prime? Was it Zelda?
I mean, for me, it's always going to be The Legend of Zelda,
Of
Echoes of
course.
Wisdom. But I think overall, looking objectively, it is definitely going to be Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, right? I think the fact that we got a name, we saw gameplay, we're seeing some of the, like you see also during that trailer, there's abilities there that we didn't even see from Samus's head. Um,
Mm.
that, like, I feel like that might have been like,
Hints.
strategically like put that like you have those four spots but we're only seeing the one item, so I think it just gave us a little bit of hints, and the fact that we're getting it so soon is a surprise. I think if people would have thought this would have been on the list, a lot of people would have thought it would release in 2026, not next year.
I honestly thought we were going to get it this holiday. I thought that was going to be their big holiday release,
Mm,
but I guess not. I think I'm with you. I think that just because we've been hearing this name Metroid Prime 4 for so long and it's been radio silence, I think somebody on Twitter posted that it was like over like almost like coming up on 900 days
oh
since we had
wow.
heard, or like 850 days or something like that, since we had heard any official word from Nintendo on Metroid Prime 4. And then we finally got it. So I think that that alone makes it. If this was the first time we were hearing of either of these games, I think it probably would have been Zelda. But because there was all this like latent excitement for Metroid Prime 4, and almost like to the point that hope was starting to fade that this game even existed.
Yeah.
But now that we have a date, or I guess a window, and we've seen footage of it, like gameplay, like that's incredible. I think that probably is the biggest announcement. So I think they were wise to choose that as like their one last thing.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Exactly. It would have been like you were saying a Zelda game, and because it wasn't, you had to wonder what was that game that would in a sense overshadow the news cycle for the Zelda game. And it is Metroid Prime for Beyond fits perfectly. I hope they just say Metroid Prime Beyond. Like we could drop the four.
Well, I mean, every one except for the first one has a subtitle.
Yeah. Yeah, true.
So I don't
True,
know.
true. Yeah, that's true.
Was there a game that surprised you the most?
I would definitely say Mario and Luigi Brothership.
Yeah.
That no one saw that coming. I think there were leaks or rumors about a Mario game,
Hmm.
but I wasn't thinking a Mario and Luigi game. And to see those now come over to the main console, it's really exciting. I think they're going to go a lot bigger than people initially think on it. And the fact, like, how do you open with a Mario game and that's not the biggest, like, that is not even the biggest story
May not even
there.
be top three.
I know, right?
I mean, it
Yeah.
might be number three, but
Maybe
like
number
also there were some
three.
other things in there that were pretty cool as well.
I mean, would it be 3? Because you have the Capcom collection. Like, I think that might have been 3.
That's up there. I mean, that's yeah, that's tough. I mean, it's probably in competition with the Marvel vs. Capcom collection.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, I think I'm with you that Brothership is probably the biggest surprise because also that studio that made the Mario and Luigi games shut down in 2019.
Yeah.
So it's like I think people just assumed that series was dead. Um, what was the direct missing? Like, what were the omissions that you were like certain were going to be there, or like thinking that they would probably be there? I have two, if you want me to start, but you can
Yeah,
go.
you start. You start.
Hollow Knight Silk Song.
Oh, yes. That is definitely one of them.
The same thing I was saying after the SGF and after the Xbox showcase at when we were out in LA. I kept saying, pour one out for the Hollow Knight homies, and just another reason to do that. And then also the one that a lot of people bring up, Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD. I think there's such a hunger for those. Any others that you can think of?
For me, it was just seeing Ocarina of Time, just because it's been so long since, like, and I love that game, but it's just been so long since we got to play it not handheld, you know.
Yeah.
Like I think that one definitely, and yeah, Twilight Princess, but Hollow Knight's the big one because I think that's the game that, you know, after SGF people are like, oh, it's probably going to appear at the Xbox showcase, and then it didn't, and it's like, oh well, it kind of makes sense to be on the Switch, like as the reveal, like revealed there with a direct and nothing. So like I really feel bad for everyone. I'm so sorry, fans of Hollow Knight.
It's got to be coming sometime soon, right? Like they said like 2 years ago that it was coming out in the next calendar year on that Xbox thing, and then it got delayed, and I don't know. It feels like it's got to be soon. Like if it's not soon, it just doesn't exist.
Yeah,
at this point.
It doesn't exist as well. I'm curious, and I wasn't expecting anything Star Fox related, but being a fan of, you know, Star Fox for the N64 and hoping for more than what we got for Star Fox Zero, I'm just curious like where that franchise will go.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I would love a good Star Fox game. It's been so long since we've had one. Last question before we take a break here. Does this direct all but confirm that we're getting a 3D Mario game year one for Switch 2?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because if it didn't come this time, like it's got to be just like, oh, they're making it for Switch 2.
Yeah, and I feel like it makes sense. Like, you know, you launch like whatever the next iteration of Mario Kart will be. I think like that would be like a holiday release for the Switch 2, and then you launch that console with a Mario game. Like that is going to be on both like the Switch and Switch 2, right? Like I think that makes the most sense. And that's like, I think it would be like a Mario Odyssey-esque type of Mario game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's what I've been expecting. If it wasn't going to be a new Donkey Kong game, it was probably going to be a Mario game, something to capitalize on the popularity. But also, we're due for a Mario game. We've somehow gotten a completely new 3D Zelda game in the time since we had a Mario game. You know, like in Mario and Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild came out the same year, and then we've gotten Tears of the Kingdom, which theoretically should take longer to develop than a 3D Mario game. But here we are.
Which, hear me out, Brian, okay? Like you just said, we got Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey same year, right?
Yeah.
What if we get Ocarina of Time in this Mario game when the Switch 2 launches? Not when the Switch 2 launches, but within the same year.
I mean, look at year one of Switch 1, right? Like Breath of the Wild, Splatoon 2, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and Super Mario Odyssey. And I'm sure there's plenty of other ones. I mean, ARMS, you can count that as well. Yeah. But like, there were so many good, that's a legendarily good first year for a console.
Yeah. And I think they go that route rather than, and I know a lot of people want Twilight Princess, and I love Twilight Princess. Like Midna is like so like underused character in the Legend of Zelda franchise. But I think similar to how we saw Skyward Sword HD, that's kind of the treatment that we see for Twilight Princess and Wind Waker. I don't see it as being like necessarily a full, like, this is our whole effort around. And it's probably just because I'm biased, because I really like Ocarina of Time.
Oh, me too. It was my favorite game for 20 years before Breath of the Wild came out. I'm right there with you. But Camille, we're going to take a break. And when we get back, we're going to wrap up our thoughts on the Nintendo Direct, hear from some of the members of the community, and get your eShop gem of the week. We will be right back. We are back, and it's time for a semi-recurring segment, Everybody Votes. Basically, I put out a poll on social media and see how the votes fall. This time I went pretty straightforward with it. How would you grade this Nintendo Direct? So, Camille, first I want to throw it to you. A, B, C, or D? How would you grade this Nintendo Direct?
I would say an A. I think, there was a lot that we went through. Obviously, the episode's a little bit longer than usual. But I didn't think the pacing was like, oh, okay, I'm getting tired of this. All right, like, let's keep it moving. Like, I never had that moment. And there were real hits. Like, you have Mario and Luigi Brothership. You also have Donkey Kong Country in there. I mean, and then delivering on Metroid Prime 4 Beyond.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was one thing no one really truly saw we would see gameplay out of it, and that it would be coming out next year. So it definitely takes the cake as like a top tier Nintendo Direct.
Yeah, I think I'm in that same camp as you. Like, I mean, Mario and Luigi, like you could, if you squint real hard, you could say we got a Mario, a Zelda, a Donkey Kong, and a Metroid game.
Yeah.
Which is just a wild lineup, especially since they're all theoretically coming out in the next like 8 or so months.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, this kind of seems like a lineup you would get for like coinciding the Switch 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
not a dying console.
Not like the end or like the sunsetting of the Switch, right? So that's like, to me, it's like, going into the Nintendo Direct, a lot of people were wondering, well, if they're very specific on this, focusing on what's coming out the later half of the year, early next year, or, with some teases to next year as well. What can they really deliver? And they're not talking about Switch 2, right? So they delivered and caught even the leakers and the people that try to spoil the news for fans off a lot. There were a lot of surprises in this one, and they should be really proud on this Direct.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were like, okay, this is, I mean, myself included, I've said this, like the first half of this year did not inspire a ton of confidence. It was like, there were a few spin-off titles like Princess Peach Showtime, which kind of were middling reception. But then we got like a bunch of remakes and remasters, and that's basically all we knew about. Like, we have Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, which I'm excited for that. I like Luigi's Mansion 3 a lot, but it's like, all right, well, like, are we just like in the phase where we're like kind of mopping up any older games that we want to remake or remaster for Switch that aren't there? Like Mario versus Donkey Kong, that was another one that came out this year, and it's like, okay, so that's the phase of this console that we're in. And I mean, we still got some of that in this, but like, man, I did not expect to get a new 2D Zelda, a new Mario and Luigi game,
Mario Party game, like
new Mario Party game.
That's something I think would have came out with Switch 2, right? Like, it just makes sense to kind of hold that off. But again, I think this is reiterating, their commitment to having the Switch continue its life cycle alongside the Switch 2. Which is insane to think. Like, this is such an old console that is still kicking and putting out hits, and the fact that they're so confident in that by saying like, yeah, you're getting a new Mario Party game, you're getting a new Zelda game, even though we have this other console that are already in devs' hands and they're playing with.
God, I'm so excited for Switch 2, but also like, I saw another. I need to write down who says these things on Twitter, but like somebody was like, Nintendo just quietly got the best holiday lineup of the year.
Yeah.
It's like,
absolutely.
What are the odds of that? Like, nobody saw that coming, I don't think. Like, this is kind of a quieter year for gaming in general. Like, there's no Tears of the Kingdom or Baldur's Gate 3 or Elden Ring. I mean, aside from the DLC that just hit this week, but Nintendo just kind of took the pole position for like the most games that I really am interested in coming out this holiday season.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like I was wondering what would be Nintendo's holiday season because they usually go really strong with that. And in bundles, right? Like I'm thinking bundles. What would be in a Switch bundle for the holidays? And it's like Zelda.
Yeah.
Like the
What more could you want?
like right? So it delivered on all fronts for me and I think there are things in there that's getting a lot of fans excited, yes, for the holiday season, but also putting more confidence in what is planned once they finally do announce the new console.
Hmm. So here's how the people on Twitter voted. A was the overwhelming majority, 61.3%. B was second place, 28.3%. C, third place, 8.1%. And D, 2.3%. And very similar results over on Threads, but it was actually even distribution between C and D. I think they both had 8%. But other than that, it was pretty close to the numbers that were on Twitter. So it seems like a lot of people are pretty hyped on this. Also, where would you rank Nintendo's summer showcase over like the other heavy hitters? So we had like the PlayStation State of Play a few weeks ago. During Summer Game Fest timeframe, we had the SGF live stream. We had the Xbox Game Showcase, Ubisoft Forward, lots of stuff to choose from. Is Nintendo Direct your top pick out of those?
Hey, like I said off the top, Nintendo was really in the corner watching SGF, the Xbox showcase, and was like, here, hold my drink. I need to talk for a minute, and then dropped all this crazy news. And I'm really like, it just, they have a new console coming out. Like, this just reiterates that it's like, hey, like we understand, like it's kind of been quiet. Last year was an amazing year for games. But we have something cooking and brewing, and you know what? We're gonna give you this other stuff too that we've just been casually working on, and they're new games for these iconic IPs that they have, right? So it just
Yeah.
also, I think what and they provided mostly dates for a lot of the games that they showcased,
There's a few
right?
2025s, but outside
There's
of
a
that, it
few,
was
but
almost, I mean, there were a decent amount of like third party things that were like
yes,
coming this winter, but
yeah.
like they don't have control over that.
No, no, they don't, right? But like, I mean, I can't argue that. Like, I'm not going to argue with someone who wants to choose maybe the Xbox Showcase, which was a very strong showing, by the
Yeah, I
way.
think that's a
Like,
solid number two.
it would for you, the
Yeah, I think
Nintendo.
I think Nintendo Direct was number one
Yeah, oh
easily for
yes,
me.
yeah, yeah. And I think the Xbox Showcase, like, it was almost right, like it was almost pretty even there. But the fact that they showed this game that's been so highly anticipated and ended the showcase with gameplay of it and giving us a name and giving it to us like next year, not
Hmm.
just, how the Xbox Showcase ended with Gears, like that's cool, but we still don't know Gears when. You
Yeah,
know what
when
I
when are
mean?
we gonna have that? Yeah,
It was very like, I feel like Nintendo took the approach as like, we have these things cooking and we're giving you as close of days as we can for this stuff and we're not showing you anything that's outside of the window of 2025.
yeah, and I think that's very smart. Again, like I said, like I think a lot of platform holders in particular have learned that hard lesson because like what was it, like 2015, I think, where we got like so many amazing
Yeah.
announcements and it was like these are not seeing the light of day for at least the next 5 years. Like Final Fantasy VII Remake was announced at E3 2015.
Yeah.
We didn't see that till 2020.
Yeah. And I know like the Xbox Showcase gave us Perfect Dark, which was I was anticipating, but again, we don't know when.
Hmm.
Right? Metroid, we know 2025, right? So it's like you
Yeah.
gotta, I kind of look at it with like, yeah, the hype train as you're living in the moment, but then you take that step back and you're like, okay, what do we know about these games? And it's like, oh, actually, we know quite a bit of dates.
Yeah. So I would put Nintendo Direct number one pretty easily. Xbox Game Showcase number two pretty easily.
Hmm.
Then it gets a little murkier. I think maybe the Summer Game Fest stream
Oh, really?
would be number three for me. Although the PlayStation State of Play did give us
Astrobot.
Astrobot. God, that is one of my favorite games of the generation, unironically.
and
Um,
and like the because
mm,
of what Astrobot is and how Astrobot was introduced as like this homage to PlayStation and what they seem to be tying in with that game here. Also, like, with the Horizon, the the Lego Horizon game, like it opens your eyes to the possibility. Are they going to do this with some of their other IPs? Is like God of War. That would be hilarious, seeing like Kratos be just funny and, or be so straight faced. And then like you have Atreus like just there providing more humor. Like it gives you possibilities where I think Summer Game Fest, I'm like, it was good, but it was kind of long. Like I feel like when you
Yeah.
look at the pacing of the top three showcases or top two showcases, the pacing was just right for both the Direct and the Xbox showcase. When I looked at the PlayStation showcase, there were some moments that like kind of lost my interest just because those games weren't for me. But for the most part, it wasn't anything where I was like, okay, this needs to wrap up now.
Yeah.
Whereas
It's
Summer
also a
Game
lot
Fest,
quicker though.
exactly. But like
Yeah.
Summer Game Fest, there were a little bit of those games where I was just like, ooh, okay, there's a lot of this is going on for a little too long.
Yeah, and I don't mean to like crap on Ubisoft Forward because I'm extreme. Like two of
Oh
my most
yes.
anticipated games of the rest of the year are Assassin's Creed Shadows and Star Wars Outlaws. You know, I went to freaking Malmo, Sweden to play Star Wars Outlaws, and Assassin's Creed Shadows. I
That
lost my
looks so good.
mind during like the behind closed doors demo that I saw. It was not as dense with like games that I'm excited about as these other things are. So it's kind of like an apples and orange comparison there.
Yeah.
Um, but I do want to say that if you are listening to the audio, the video version, you might want to check out on an episode like this or maybe future episodes, because I'm also splicing in some of the trailers as we're talking about them, so you can see the point of reference as we're talking about these games of what they look like. If you're into kind of like the longer form videos, like I don't know, I get it though. Like I am, when it comes to podcasts, I am audio through and through. Podcasts I put on in the background while I'm doing the dishes or whatever.
Yeah.
So I get it. But if you would like some enhancements, the video version on YouTube is the way to go with that. So to put a bow on this discussion, Camille, I want to take the opportunity to read some of the community reactions to the Nintendo Direct. As I mentioned before, most of these are from the All Things Nintendo Patreon page. So if you'd like to join that and share your thoughts, go to patreon.com and search All Things Nintendo, or patreon.com/Brian Shea Podcasts. Right now it's completely free, but I am looking into potentially doing some paid tiers with bonus content in the near future. So we're going to speed run these because this is already by far the longest episode of All Things Nintendo
I'm so
history.
sorry.
Do not dare apologize. This episode has been awesome, Camille, and a large part of that is because of you. So thank you.
And you too.
So Johnny5 over on Patreon says, I loved it. I am just so dang excited for the new Zelda game, and I know that's biasing my view, but I also thought basically everything else looked super cool. Stoked for Zelda in only 3 months. I need to learn how to read.
I mean, it's been a few hours, so you're
It has
fine.
been a few
Yeah.
hours. Chad over on Patreon says, my favorite game from the Direct was The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. The announcement of this game was a delightful, emotional surprise. I'm extremely excited for it, and it has blasted to the top of my list of most anticipated games of 2024. I think Echoes of Wisdom looks charming, creative, ambitious, and fun. To me, it feels like the potential beginning of us getting more mainline Zelda games that feature Zelda as the main playable protagonist within the next decade and beyond. Also, it was great to see and hear from Eiji Aonuma in this Direct.
Also, he has crazy, like, nice shirts.
Yeah,
Aonuma's
always the
great,
best.
great shirts.
Megan S. chiming in saying, the Zelda announcement was exciting. The Donkey Kong game was a little interesting as well. Joseph says, I would give the Direct an A-. It had new entries from some of Nintendo's biggest franchises and some really interesting third-party announcements like Fantasian being freed from the Apple Arcade jail. The Dragon Quest HD 2D announcement and the Proof of Life for Metroid were all make goods on promises made years earlier. An overall outstanding Direct, but it still begs the question of what they are waiting for with Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD. That's kind of become a running gag on this show at this point, because that and Donkey Kong Country Returns was actually one of those for a while too. So I'm glad that we can put that one to rest. Elena R says, I thought it was great. I'm very excited for The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, but where is Wind Waker? Crying face emoji. I so want to play that on Switch. There were a lot of other games my family is interested in. The Pokemon fans in my family are waiting for a new game, but I tried to temper expectations that it was not going to be revealed in a Direct. We'd love a new mystery dungeon title. Yeah. Zach says, definitely good and full of surprises, though the lack of Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD solidifies that we are never getting them for Switch in my mind. Fair enough. I do
Keep
not
hope
know if it's worth
alive.
holding out hope at this point for that
Keep
game.
hope alive. Keep
I
hope
think Switch
alive.
2 at this point.
Hey, if we think it's coming out on both, maybe.
Maybe. Owen says, kind of a weird one. Some great announcements and surprises help boost it, but more than half of the direct felt like updates on odd niche games. Also, very disappointed it's an HD upgrade of Donkey Kong Country Returns and not a new country game. It's been 10 years, Nintendo. Sorry, I had to give that response the
Emphasis,
right way.
yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
emphasized properly. The delivery, that's the word I was looking for. Wham Bam Sam the Gaming Man says, it was awesome to see a glimpse of some of the games we might all be playing on Switch too. All right. Uh, Cover your ears if you're a younger listener. Chaps My Ass on Patreon says, and we're in the thick of the fun username category of this response list. They say, it was awesome. The new Zelda game looks amazing. We finally got Metroid Zero Mission added to the Game Boy Advance library. Perfect Dark dropping on N64 Online was super unexpected. Have to buy some Surge and Doritos to get the old crew back together for some multiplayer on that. I love that. And then also went on to say, then the best part for sure was Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. I feel like I've been waiting forever to see anything from this game, and what they gave us was more than I expected to see.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking this is going to be a day one launch title for the Switch 2 and hopefully have a version for the Switch as well. Continuing the tradition of great names, Philly Yeet Steak says,
Yeet that steak.
Yeet that steak. It was great. Some exciting announcements and surprises, and Nintendo continues to make decisions that are interesting and unexpected. Personally, I am super excited to see the Marvel Fighting Collection coming, as I never thought I would see some of those games re-released. Paige says, fantastic showing for a presumably dying console. Tons of specific callouts to mega fan audiences like Dragon Quest for me, and something shown for every type of player. Jason said, I love this direct. They showed new Legend of Zelda with Zelda as the protagonist. I've been waiting for something like this for years. I'm not a first-person fan, but Metroid Prime 4 looked good. I've never played a Mario and Luigi game, but I may have to now. My 10-year-old immediately saw that game, or my 10-year-old saw that game and immediately told me that we were going to have so much fun playing it together. How can you say no to that? Overall, an amazing direct with some new games, a bunch of games being added to NSO, including Metroid Zero Mission, which is awesome, plus a mature 17 plus N64 section added. Guess I know what I'll be doing this fall. Also, the first 3 Dragon Quest games getting HD 2D remakes. Mind blown emoji. Grant says, it was great. Return of Mario and Luigi. Fantasian having an enhanced port, getting off Apple Arcade. New 2D Zelda, Donkey Kong Country, and of course Metroid Prime 4. That's just what I was excited for from the direct. Even that game Mio looked neat. I do wonder who is developing the new Mario and Luigi since Alpha Dream went bankrupt, and I hope we'll find out soon. I think we're coming to the end here. Time Thief 365 says, I was expecting Nintendo to send in the end-of-life Kirby games to shepherd away the Switch like the Grim Reaper. I guess it still has a little bit more time left.
Okay,
Brooke,
don't knock Kirby, all right, with being the Grim Reaper. Now I gotta see some fan art with that. Like that must exist on the internet.
Kirby Grim Reaper art.
Yeah.
Brooke comes in and says, personally, I miss unique items in the Legend of Zelda series. Stacking furniture to reach higher elevations doesn't have the same impact as getting a new and interesting item. In earlier titles, there was the excitement that came from expanding your toolkit, which made it possible to traverse your areas as well as augment your combat item options, like the hook shot. This is me talking now. I think that finding new echoes might be kind of the replacement for that. And maybe there will be some new abilities that you could have that will, like Camille said, open up like kind of the ways you can combine echoes or whatever. Back to Brooke. The new wand is basically a Katamari, cataloging every interactive item you come across. The GUI is straight from the quick select menu in Tears of the Kingdom too. It's one huge list to scroll through horizontally, and similar to Tears of the Kingdom, once you get the hang of it, there are really only going to be a handful of items you'll actually want to create echoes of to play efficiently. It's not the game for me, but as it releases on my 40th birthday, I realize that I may have just outgrown certain video games. And then they follow up with future eShop gem of the week. God, I can't pronounce it. Shim. which was revealed previously, was shown again in the Japanese version of the Nintendo Direct, and now has a release date
Oh.
of July 18th, which, by the way, I've played Shim, and it's very, very fun. That's the one where you're jumping from shadow to shadow.
Oh, yeah,
That
yeah,
indie
yeah.
game. I think it was on the Nintendo Indie Direct a couple months ago, and it's very, very good. We do have just one more here, this time from Chain Whippin' over on the All Things Nintendo channel on the Game Informer Discord. They have plenty on their mind after this one. They say, "Hey, Brian, I have lots of thoughts. What a direct. In 40-ish minutes of game announcements and updates, there were only 3 or 4 I didn't care about. Definitely a 10 out of 10 show." And then they go off on like running down their list. Prime 4 looked good, but my hype level wasn't stoked to 11, mostly because what was shown looked like the opening of the game with very little powers. But Tears of the Kingdom taught me there's always more in the final game.
Yeah,
Also,
exactly.
what does Beyond mean? Beyond the capabilities of Switch? I saw the Switch logo, but we may have an inferred confirmation of the first cross-gen game of the successor.
Ooh.
Yeah, we were kind of in that same wavelength, Camille.
Yep.
And then they go on to say, same with Zelda. To my knowledge, they only showed the Tri-Rod, but if I know Zelda, there's much more packed in there.
Yep.
Yep, Chain Whippin's going for it. It's almost as if they listened to this episode before we
I know,
recorded it.
right? Before we recorded
And
it.
then next up, they go, Marvel games, specifically Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Should we be looking for the cartridge on this one? I think that was what I was implying before. Like, don't let them take it away. Maybe look for the cartridge on this one. Mio, yet another stellar-looking 2D Metroidvania, Ori Hollow Knight game. We live in a golden age. Then they say, great to see Donkey Kong Country Returns get a bump up to the current generation. Never played a Mario and Luigi game. Perhaps this is the right time to try one. Never played a Mario Party game. Perhaps, ... Nah.
Oh my gosh.
There are haters. There are Mario Party haters,
Hate
Camille.
on Mario Party, okay? It's really fun. If you like WarioWare, you will like Mario Party. At least some element of it.
I do love WarioWare.
So good.
But that is a wrap on our very long-winded discussion on the Nintendo Direct. I hope everybody listening enjoyed that. Again, this is the longest episode of All Things Nintendo to date, and could not have asked for a better guest. And as such, we are going to turn the floor over to Camille for the final segment of this episode. It is the eShop Gem of the Week. Chance to give a little bit of shine to a game that maybe otherwise would not get it. So, Camille, what is your eShop Gem of the Week?
I will say it is Cadence of Hyrule, Crypt of the NecroDancer. I was going to say Necromancer, but NecroDancer featuring The Legend of Zelda. I'm surprised because I chatted about this before. This has not been brought up before.
I mean, we've talked about it, but not as an eShop Gem, which is the only rule.
Yeah, I mean, and I think there's enough time that from its initial release that there's probably an audience out there that hasn't, stepped into the world of these iconic like soundtracks that from the Legend of Zelda franchise that has been twisted into this rhythm game where you're still going through Hyrule and you just have to be on beat with everything.
Yeah.
It is so fun to play. Also, like just to play on the go. So this is definitely one of those games I like to play in handheld mode. And we go to a lot of conventions and stuff like that, and shows, travel for work. So it's like one that I would revisit just so I could hear the music. And they do an amazing job on keeping these renditions of these songs that you love fresh and fun, that it is one of those games that you will want to go back and play over and over again.
Yeah, and it's so good. The music is amazing. Like you already know the Zelda music is fantastic. One of the best franchises with the most consistently great music. There's also, if you're not of the rhythmly inclined ilk, there is a way that you can turn off the rhythm matching mode. So because the bass mode, you have to move in time with the music beat. You
have to time your movements as you move.
If you don't want that and you just want to play a game like this without having to, you can listen to the music, you can fight the enemies and everything, you can explore Hyrule. You don't have to actually match the beat if you turn off that mode. And it's not a bad deal either. So you can drop $25 on it and get the base game, but there's also a season pass.
Yeah.
And it's $15, which adds 39 extra tracks to it and everything. And I think they're themed after like Majora's Mask. I think there's one other game that it like themes after, but it's like, and it adds new characters and everything. And the game came out in 2019, and I feel like not enough people do talk. Like people know
Yeah.
about it, but I don't feel like enough people talk about it, which is kind of the crazy thing.
Well, I think there was a lot that was happening back then that it kind of got overshadowed. But yeah, it is such a good game that I feel like I just need this resurgence of it. I wouldn't mind more content for this game, actually, to tell you the truth.
I mean, that would have been an amazing, like, just little, like, oh, by the way, here's like the Breath of the Wild Tears of the Kingdom pack.
Music.
I mean, but the music is a lot less prominent in those games than it is on like something like Ocarina of Time. But yeah, there are definitely bangers on the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom soundtracks. But thank you so much for joining me for this episode of All Things Nintendo. This has been a blast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It honestly just feels like an extension of our conversation that we had a few weeks ago. And we probably could have kept going, but for everyone's ears, we will not.
Yeah, we've got plenty of bonus content out on this episode. You don't even have to subscribe to a theoretical paid tier of Patreon to get this bonus content. This is already like 3 episodes worth of content. So I really appreciate you sticking with me on this. I mean, again, couldn't have asked for a better guest. So I appreciate you joining me on kind of short notice here also.
Oh, no problem at all. Anytime. I would love to come out and like geek out with you and talk all things Nintendo.
Well, I mean, we'll certainly have you back. And thank you so much to everyone for listening. Do me a favor if you haven't already, throw All Things Nintendo a 5-star review and hit that subscribe button. If you want to get any questions or comments in, you can get in touch with me at brian@allthingsnintendo.com. Hit me up on social media at Brian P. Shea, or leave a comment on the free All Things Nintendo Patreon page. We also still have that All Things Nintendo channel on the Game Informer community Discord, which is a perk for subscribing to the Game Informer Twitch channel, even just for 1 month. Camille, tell people where they can find you online.
Everywhere online at This Is Camco. Yeah, there you go. That's where you can find me, all the latest of where I'm hosting, what I'm up to, and pretty much all things The Legend of Zelda.
Well, how can you say no to that? That is our show for this week. Thank you all again so much for listening. Take care. We'll see you next time.